honest mistake, and I expect he'll probably be voting against his own motion, which he actually is entitled to do. Councillors, the only part of the previous motion that I actually did like was the part about the fencing. I do not support us spending $2 million on an oval that's not in our 10-year financial plan.
Thank you. Mr. CEO, do you have a comment you wish to make?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The operative issue around here is about the allocation of funds for the oval. If council does decide it wants to proceed with this outcome, the officers would still administratively seek to address the negotiation, Councillor Catalano, around fencing and to see what we could do with the proponent. So let's just say that leave the fencing out of it at this point in time. That's all been dealt with by council. You can't come back to the motion. The issue for you now is whether you really support the $2.2 million being spent. If you do, then you've got the motion before you. If you don't, then I'd suggest, Mr. Mayor, as Councillor Bowman's already flagged, that you move accordingly, not to support it.
Thank you. A speaker for the motion. Speaker against the motion. Any other speakers for or against the motion? Well, I'm going to enter the debate. If there's no other speakers, I'll hand. What's your question, Councillor Catalano?
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify. What you're saying is if this motion was to get on, that the staff would still go ahead and look at fencing as part of this motion for the Evelyn Reserve.
No, I don't think the CEO said that, but I'll get him to clarify it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The staff would engage with the conversation with the Superior to see what they would provide separately to the allocation for the oval for the fencing. And then we could come back afterwards and deal with that separately.
Thank you. I'll hand the chair to Councillor Congdon's Deputy Mayor. I support the officer's recommendation. I supported the previous motion. And the reason is, as Councillor Catalano has outlined, not everything can be in a 10-year plan because some things arise within that 10 years that we're unaware of. I was unaware that Hesperia were going to have a subdivision on the old Midland brick area. So once I became aware of that, I took the time to have a site visit. And I think any time that a developer is prepared to stump up a couple of $1 million to remediate a facility that is owned by the City of Swan, it is money well spent because it saves us the cost of doing it. And I do take into consideration that the future of other sporting ovals in that area may be reduced if the East Link or the Orange route goes ahead. But I was very happy when Hesperia said they'd also fund the protection of the wetlands. And as a result of some emails I sent today and forwarded on to Councillor Catalano, she worked up a new motion which has just been defeated. I didn't think there was a kilometre of fencing, but there's going to be walk trails as well. So getting back to this motion before us, I support the officer's recommendation. I'd encourage you to do it. Not everything can be on a 10-year plan, otherwise we just can't deal with things. When they come up, we have to be flexible enough to take them into consideration, and that's where I can leave it. Thank you. Councillor Parry, you're right to reply. Thank you.
Just wish to apologise, councillors. It was not a deliberate play at all. I've had a lack of sleep due to my wife's injury, so I do apologise for that. There was no deliberate play. I'm just put it to a vote, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Those in favour of the officer's recommendation? I have Councillor Jones, Councillor Prodovnik, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Singh, Councillor Congdon, myself, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson, Councillor Richards, and then Councillor McCulloch, which is 10. The officer's recommendation is passed. Those against were Councillor Bowman, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Parry, and Councillor Knight. I thought I'd had, so that must have been 9-6 and not 10-5. Now, 6 people put their hand up against. Can you just clarify that? Can you, those against, please put your hand up. I've got, oh no, it was 5, sorry.
10-5.
I've had a tiresome time as well. Thank you. And I've just been advised the live streaming is back on. I'm looking for my run sheet. Thank you, councillors. The next item will be item 13.3. It's in part A of the agenda on page 16. It's the proposed demolition of a single house and removal of native vegetation in Fauntleroy Street, Guildford. And Councillor Johnson, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My motion is that council resolve to defer consideration of the application for proposed demolition of single house and removal of native vegetation and 2 replacement single houses, lots 33 and 34, number 7 Fauntleroy Street, Guildford, to a future ordinary meeting of council to enable the city to engage at the applicant's cost an independent structural condition assessment of the existing house. Record the reason for changing the officer's recommendation is that A, in the Guildford Heritage Area Planning Policy in section C8 1.1, there is a presumption against the demolition of contributory built form in the state registered heritage places. In the Guildford Heritage Area, this includes all properties constructed up to and including 1945. In the Guildford Heritage Area Planning Policy in N8.1.2, demolition of any building will not be permitted where there has been a demonstrable period of neglect leading to deterioration of the building's condition. C, an independent report can be required and should be required in this case. D, the owner has stated that economic reasons are the motive for the demolition and this is not a valid reason for demolition in Guildford. E, the owner does not intend to build the replacement buildings but instead intends to sell the property and there is no guarantee that a new owner will go ahead and construct the new buildings in the application.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Richardson, is there anyone against? You wish to debate it? Thank you. You have 3 minutes, Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, we must remember that planning in Guildford is different to everywhere else in the city of Swan because it is a unique heritage area and has its own planning policy that we recently approved and we debated it earlier in this meeting. Councillors, one intent of the Guildford Heritage Area Planning Policy is to prevent the demolition of contributory houses in Guildford. The presumption in Guildford is against demolition. We don't want demolition by neglect or demolition by accident or demolition by circumstances of the owner. We need to preserve these contributory buildings for the future. The planning policy allows us to ask for a City Commission structural report, which I think is justified in this case. Mr. Russell advises an independent report will cost between $5,000 and $10,000. This compares favourably with the cost of demolition at $40,000. Why do I think an independent report is needed? Well, the owner's report lists all the evident faults, yet on page 3 it says, if the owner were to consider reuse, redevelopment or conservation, then the following works will be required. Remove all the roof sheets, external wall cladding sheets and inspect the underlying structural timbers. Strip the floorboards and inspect the underlying structure, repair and replace. Inspect the floors, the roof structure and repair and replace any damaged structural members. Upgrade the roof connections to meet current building regulation standards and upgrade and strengthen any structural members or connections that do not meet current building standards would need to be supervised by a structural engineer. Councillors, I do have a degree in civil engineering and amazingly I am a chartered engineer. My own test, councillors, is to test the service load of the floor to check for deflection. So I just jumped up and down on the floor. There's no movement at all in all but one room. So most of the rooms are solid, which suggests that the stumps have been recently replaced, most likely in the 1980s. An older house at 31 Swan Street next door to mine was in much worse condition, and the owner actually followed all the steps above and now has a wonderful home. It's in beautiful condition, and yet it's a 1910 home. That's where it's listed as a contributory house, even though it looks quite new. We need to give this house another chance.
You have 1 minute.
That's why we need an independent structural report. Let's support our Guildford Heritage Area Planning Policy and get a second opinion. Maybe we can keep this home, which has lots of potential. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson is the seconder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, there are a few councillors attended the property last Sunday, and including myself, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Johnson, and Councillor Howlett, and I'm not sure. Sorry, and oh yes, did I miss you? Might have missed you, Dave. Were you there? Dave was there, and had a quick look through the property. I've not ever entered that property before. I've only ever seen it
since 2013. I spoke with the proponent as well, and I understand his predicament. However, one of the reasons that we isn't listed in here is that, you know, when it becomes a financial issue for the person, that's not a council consideration. I did go through the property quite thoroughly. The property is in, to the naked eye, it would appear that it would be easier to demolish. However, it was quite solid. I know from the experience of having a similar house that I'm doing at the moment. The ceilings were intact. I was reminded to read the structural report, but the house can be salvaged. But it's only due to the financial issues of the proponent that he doesn't wish to undertake that. Please consider Councillor Johnson's motion tonight, that it would be of benefit to the area in Guildford to consider looking at getting an independent report.
Thank you. Speaker against the motion, Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I'll be foreshadowing the officer's recommendation. Mr. Mayor, as you're aware, you and me went to have a look at that place. I'm glad I went with you, because otherwise I'd be worried I'd be lost still trying to get out. Mr. Mayor, we can't keep changing the goalposts. Mr. Mayor, I just want to read out the conclusion in the officer's report. Council resolved to defer the application to demolish the existing dwelling at number 7 in order for the applicant to supply a structural conditional assessment of a dwelling and replacement building plans. The applicant has supplied the structural condition assessment and replacement building plans and provided a sporting character impact assessment and heritage impact assessment from a heritage consultant, and it goes on. Mr. Mayor, I understand why we voted against it last time. Can't demolish without showing what we're going to be replaced with. The applicant has. I can't see in the policy where it says you have to build it. He's done what we asked him to do. He has done what we asked him to do, and now we're changing the goalposts. Mr. Mayor, I can't support the motion. I support the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion. Speaker against the motion. Any other speakers for or against? For or against, Councillor?
For.
Thank you. Yeah, 3 minutes.
Yes. Okay. I went and had a look at the house. The photographs look pretty bad, so I thought I'd go and have a check it out. Actually, we'd done a little bit of preliminary study and found out that actually the report that they produced dating the house to interwar is actually incorrect. It's more like 1915, something like that, if you go by the post office records. So, you know, it's incorrect information that's been given to council. So I went and had a look, and actually it definitely does look much older than interwar. If you look at some of the features, the front door with the side panels and the architraving or the skirting boards. So, and the other thing about it, it wasn't in that bad a condition, actually. I think it could be renovated quite well. In fact, I would say probably the house that I bought, which is a timber cottage, a little bit older than that, but was in a far worse condition when I bought it. And I brought it right up to scratch for not very much money, actually, over the years. So there's and then the other thing is that like all these things that we have in Midland and all the heritage that we have throughout the city of Swan, every time we lose a heritage building, we're one closer to having nothing left, and that leaves us all bereft. It leaves us without our social history, because the houses actually are they speak about, they actually give us something to put the social history onto.
You have 1 minute left, thank you.
So we need to, and I mean especially Guildford, you know, being the precinct that it is, we need to look after everything and make sure that property owners purchase and do renovate properties instead of letting them go and demolishing them through neglect. It's one of those things, isn't it? I mean, it's been hugely successful for Guildford. The heritage aspect of the town is going to be hugely successful. It's hugely successful for anywhere, Fremantle, Bassendean, Vic Park, wherever there's heritage, people just flock there and they love being there and they love living there. So, it's no different in the city of Swan. And I don't know how long it's going to take us to recognise that fact. But, ultimately we will have to. So let's just keep this house going and ensure that it's renovated. And
Thank you. That's your time. Any other speakers, councillors? Councillor McCulloch?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, this has been in train since April. It's 9 months. 9 months that we've looked at deferrals, and we have had a process in place, and this applicant has worked hard to meet a lot of our requests. 30th of August 2022 provided a structural condition report on the existing house. While the existing house we know is a contributory place constructed prior to 1945, that structural condition report found that there's extensive termite damage, significant loss of the original fabric within the structure of the building, including floor, wall and roof framing members and their cladding. And that is a professional opinion from someone who does this for a living and looks at these issues. The cost of conserving the house would be very high, and it is incredibly important to look at our buildings within our Guildford precinct and the aspects of whether to demolish or not demolish. They also submitted the character impact statement and the heritage impact statement. And with that, previous owners have removed much original fabric, and where replacements have occurred, these have been poorly executed and not in sympathy with the original design intent. The works required to restore and conserve the place would result in the place retaining little original fabric and being predominantly reconstruction. So the city staff did accept the findings of the applicant's structural condition report and the heritage impact statement, which concluded that the existing house is structurally irredeemable, and its demolition will not have an adverse impact on the heritage values of the Guildford historic town. And I do understand and appreciate that fine line, but we have some very, very solid evidence here as to why this is in train with a demolition. The original application was referred to the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage, who provided support for the demolition and actually stated a few other things, and it wouldn't have any negative impact on the cultural heritage significance of the precinct. So in this case, based on expert opinion, based on the time taken with some of the deferrals and the requests of the applicant, and as Councillor Bowman has stated, who has done everything we have requested, I would believe in our capacity it is fair and reasonable to look at this, and I will be supporting the officer's recommendation, and I can't endorse a deferral for another structural report, of which we already have one from a professional that states very clearly that this house is irredeemable.
Thank you, Councillor McCulloch. Any other speakers for or against? Then once again, I'll hand the chair to the Deputy Mayor and I'll enter the debate. Councillors, I also took the opportunity of attending the House with Councillor Bowman about a week before the set other councillors did. And I was actually amazed at the very poor condition of the houses, obviously, that squatters have been living inside. The floor coverings had been ripped up. Some of the architrave had been pulled off. Yes, I suppose anything is repairable, but in my estimation, the amount of work that would be required would be more than what the actual block and the house would be worth. The other very interesting thing I noticed when we actually got in and we walked along the strip of the road there, it's next door is 8 or 9 reasonably new units to the left-hand side. You can shake your head, Councillor Richardson, but there's 8 or 9 units immediately to the left at number 5, I think. At number 11 next door is another 2 newer dwellings. So what happened to this street? This house has been left. I think there may be one other original house on it, and everything has been renewed, perhaps in the last 10 to 15 years. I do have empathy for the owner. He should have perhaps checked the conditions of buying a property in Guildford before he did. But I also agree with the officers that this, in my view, this house is irredeemable for repair. It's a hodgepodge of red brick, asbestos, and there's another type of plastic cladding that's been added over the years. So to me, it had really no heritage value. I've also was going to read out the same items that Councillor McCulloch had just read about, the heritage report, the structural condition, but she's beaten me to that, so I'll end my debate there. I would encourage you to support the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. You have 3 minutes for your right of reply.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, as everyone knows, I live in Guildford and I support this new policy, and the policy is there for a reason. It's to protect houses in this exact condition. It's been said it's a hodgepodge of different materials from different times. Council says a well-known, well, it may not be so well-known, thought experiment about is something that has been continually maintained and updated. Still the original thing, and the example, you can look it up on Wikipedia, is the ship of Theseus, and the Athenians rowed a boat to Crete and back for several hundred years once a year. And the question after several hundred years was, is it still the original ship of Theseus? The answer is, it was. So it's the form that counts. So the form is there. It was said by another council, the floor coverings ripped up, things have been pulled down. Well, actually, if the holes, some of the holes that you see were actually done by the structural engineers doing the examination with the permission of the owner. They actually have to take the floorboards up and pull things down to have a look. And the mess that's in there, well, that's caused by squatters. The house was lived in until about 3 or 4 years ago. I knew the lady who lived there, Tamara, and her family. My wife went around there on occasion to visit. A guy called Fred Bishop lived there for nearly 40 years. So the house is quite livable. Structurally irredeemable, in which case, why did I not fall through the floor when I jumped up and down on it? Councillors, I do have a degree in civil engineering. I can tell you there's a bit of a strange mismatch between what happens when you actually test the load-bearing capability of it and all this talk about termites. If you read the report on section 3, it tells you it can be repaired. It's actually that simple. It can be fixed. And there are probably owners out there who want to fix it. Apparently, this has been going on since April. Well, actually, Guildford's been going on since 1829, and that's why we have the new policy with its presumption against demolition and relocation. So, councillors, it says the loss of a contributory place, and it is one, negatively impacts on the significance and character of the heritage area completely. Once gone, it can never be replaced. Demolition of a contributory place is rarely appropriate, and there is a presumption against demolition of contributory places. It does acknowledge there are exceptional circumstances where demolition cannot be avoided, but the financial circumstances of the owner are not one, and they're not listed in here as an exception. It says demolition of contributory places is avoided. Demolition of contributory places is avoided, it says, as performance criteria. In circumstances where demolition approval is sought, the onus rests with the applicant to provide a compelling justification for it. It's not a compelling justification because the report merely talks about termites. It says, the report says categorically, this house could be repaired. I've seen a house older than this one repaired right next to my own house. It can be done. So this is not an exception. Again, the people of Guildford want to keep it. If you're coming in from Elbrook and saying, oh, it's only a house.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. That's your time.
Can I keep going a bit more, Mr Mayor? I've only got a little bit left to respond. I want to talk about changing the goalposts.
Well,
this document is the goalpost. The heritage area plan is the goalpost. So please, councillors, support the
Councillor
heritage
Johnson.
area plan. I'm just finishing off, Mr. Mayor. It's
Can
quite
I'm
important.
going to put that to the council, whether you can continue or not. Thank you, and perhaps I just need to correct one of your statements. I think you said that the report said the house was repairable in your last couple of moments before I asked.
Mr. Mayor, debate is over. Can you please put it to the
No, but if you've said an incorrect
No,
statement
there is no power of the mayor to interrupt or correct. So if you can show us where that
if you're
is.
misleading the council,
No,
Councillor Johnson.
I'm not
you
misleading
said
the
it was
council, Mr. Mayor.
repairable.
Please do
The
not
structural-
interrupt. You've been asked not to interrupt councillors. Please
Well,
don't
I'm telling
do
you
it.
now, Councillor Johnson.
Mr.
The
Mayor,
structural report said it was irredeemable, and I'll leave it there. I'm now going
that's
to put
an
it.
incorrect
I'm
statement,
now
Mr. Mayor. You've
going-
been asked not to interrupt. Please do not do so. The debate is over. Thank
It
you.
is over, Councillor Johnson. I'm now going to put the motion. Those in favour of Councillor Johnson, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Knight and Councillor Richardson, which is 4. The motion is lost. Councillor Bowman, you foreshadowed the officer's recommendation. You're seconding that, Councillor McCulloch. Is there anyone against? Do you wish to debate it, Councillor Johnson? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Bowman. You don't wish to open the debate. Councillor McCulloch is the seconder. Thank you. Speaker against the motion of the officer's recommendation.
Yeah, well, look, councillors, this is an important matter. So we have a policy. The policy makes it clear there's a presumption against demolition. And if you do read that policy, Mr. Mayor, you're welcome to respond to this. Read the report. It says how to repair the house. So if I can just find it amongst all the paperwork here, it explains. Well, somewhere in here, recommendations. If the owner were to consider reuse, redevelopment or conservation, then as a minimum requirement, the following works would be required to achieve compliance. So the report is saying it can be done, Mr. Mayor. So remove all the roof sheets and external wall cladding sheets and inspect the underlying structural timbers. Strip the floorboards and inspect the underlying structure, repair and replace. Inspect the roof structure and repair and replace any damaged structural members. Upgrade and strengthen any structural members or connections. I said this in my debate. It's in there. It's on page 4. It says it can be done. So it's wrong to interrupt a councillor after the debate has concluded to tell them that they're wrong. There is no power of the mayor to interrupt or to tell people that they're wrong.
Can you keep to the debate?
No, I'm just pointing out this important point, not to interrupt. You've done it again, not to interrupt. Let's make this clear.
I'm the presiding member, Councillor Johnson.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
If someone's off track, I'm asking
Mr.
you
Mayor,
to
you
stay
are the
on
presiding member,
Point of order,
but
Mr.
you're
Mayor.
not permitted to interrupt.
What's your point of order? Thank you, Councillor Bowman.
Relevant under main procedure local law, I can even quote the section if you want.
Well, that's why I've asked Councillor Johnson. I reminded him to stay on track. Whether I'm interrupting him, he's making an issue out of that. It's got nothing to do with the motion before us. So once again, Councillor Johnson, please debate the item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I hope I'm not going to be interrupted anymore. So, our Guildford Heritage Area Planning Policy says there is a presumption against demolition. It's a serious presumption, and it says there have to be exceptional circumstances, a compelling justification to demolish. The report does not provide a compelling justification to demolish because the report says that the building can be repaired. It can be upgraded, and other houses in Guildford have been brought back from the brink. So it has potential to be a pleasant house. It could be upgraded with the right owner. It could be restored. Similar houses have been restored, and there's a presumption against it. And councillors should consider what the ward councillors think and what people in Guildford think. I believe it can be restored. So I think that we should think again. I don't believe it should be demolished. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. For the motion of the officer's recommendation. Speaker against. Any other speakers for or against? Being no other speakers, you're right to reply. Thank you, Councillor Bowman. Thank you. I now put the motion. Those in favour of the officer's recommendation of Councillor Jones, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Podovnik, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Singh, Councillor Congdon, myself, Councillor Parry, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson and Councillor McCulloch. The motion is passed. Those against were Councillors Johnson, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Knight and Councillor Richardson. It was passed 11-4. Thank you, councillors. That takes us to the next item, which is the item 4.5, single house and animal establishment dog kennel, Seaford Road in Bullsbrook. It's on page 6 of the run sheet and page 170 of the agenda. Councillor Bowman, you have a motion.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, move that council resolves to 1, adopt the officer's recommendation subject to modification to the recommended conditions and further conditions as follows. Condition 6, dog training outside of the kennel building shall be restricted to the hours of 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. on the days Monday to Saturday and 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Sunday. 2, condition 20, prior to a building permit being issued, the applicant owner is subject to the satisfaction of the City of Swan a landscaping plan for the subject site that provides screening via native planting around the perimeter of the training field fences and around the perimeter of the lot boundary fence subject to condition 8. And 3, condition 34, subsequent to the installation of an approved on-site effluent disposal system, the applicant owner is to supply annually to the City of Swan, to the satisfaction of the CEO, certification that the system is operating adequately to prevent nutrients from contaminating groundwater and the adjoining Allenbrook. Mr Mayor, for the reason for changing the officer's recommendation is to lessen the effect on the amenities and to the neighbours.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Knight, is there anyone against? Do you wish to debate it? Okay, I'll take the amendment and see if it's agreeable to both the move and the second. What's your amendment, please, Councillor McCulloch?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In item 1, so item 1.1, that is omitted. And that would then subsequently be the officer recommendation. And in item 2, where it says provide screening via native planting around the perimeter of the training fields, I'd like to finish it there and omit and around the perimeter of the lot boundary fencing subject to condition 8.
I'll ask if that's acceptable to the mover. It is not. I'll then ask the mover to open the debate, followed by the seconder, and then you can move your amendment to be included, Councillor McCulloch. Thank you, Councillor Bowman. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, this is simply my alternatives, just changing a few conditions. Mr Mayor, the first one is no training outside of the hours after 6 p.m. In the application itself from the applicant, they said they weren't going to do it. Mr Mayor, there's been concerns raised about the impact of the amenity. I understand the neighbours and any other neighbours are a long way away. However, Mr Mayor, when you live in a rural area with not too many cars coming around, when you start to see cars after 6 p.m, 7 p.m, 8 p.m, it's always a little bit concerning. So again, that's why that condition. Mr Mayor, the second condition is screening. Mr Mayor, rural fences on the boundary aren't normally 6-foot chain mesh fencing or whatever's going to be used to keep the dogs from escaping with the issues of other people and the horses and all that. Mr Mayor, this is simply saying we understand it's probably needed, it is needed, but let's just do some screening there. And Mr Mayor, the third condition, and we heard from a deputation regarding concerns of nutrients leaching into the Allenbrook. There are some significant concerns in a number of areas. If the applicant and the effluent system is doing the right thing, there won't be a problem. But let's make sure we check on that.
Thank you. Is the second to Councillor Knight?
Nothing to add. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Question, Councillor Congdon.
Thank you. Question of Mr Russell, please, in relation to the planting around the perimeter. I haven't measured the perimeter fence. Can someone tell me what the perimeter fence lineal metres are.
Bear with me, please, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
If we look, Mr. Mayor, to page 192, so the Seafood Road frontage there, I think looks like it's about, I think that would be 481 metres. 208 metres on the northern side boundary. You can see on the outside perimeters 146, 77, 159, and the long side or southern side boundary 535. So you're looking there very approximately estimated about probably 1.5 kilometres
yeah.
or more.
Okay. So my the second question then through to you, Mr. Russell, is that in Councillor Bowman's motion, it talks about a native planting around the perimeter. What is the understanding of native planting? Is it a tree every 10 metres? Is it a tree every 1 metre? Is it a tree every 5 metres? Is it a shrub every metre? What constitutes native planting around a perimeter of 1.5 kilometres?
Through Mr. Mayor, it's clear enough what native planting it would be. It would be native specimens native to Western Australia. I think that the question, as I understand it from the Deputy Mayor, is that what is the density of planting that's required along the fence? And look, quite plainly, the condition doesn't articulate that. So what it actually says there, to the satisfaction of the City of Swan. So the ordinary course through that condition, the discretion as to what is adequate degree of planting would fall in the ordinary course through the CEO and then subsequently acting through to city staff, probably myself. Unless there's some further articulation of the council or Councillor Bowman is mindful to do that, I wouldn't know. I would have to form my own view if the condition doesn't specify the density of planting.
So my third question then through to you, Mr. Russell, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, is that we're talking about 1.5 kilometres of planting to the perimeter and we're unsure of what the planting is. I'd be looking at probably a guesstimate of what the cost might be if you've got a crystal ball that the applicant is going to face in actually carrying out a planting and a reticulation program to make sure that the plantings don't die through summer. The crystal ball, maybe.
A lot of Christmas vouchers at Bunnings, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Landscape.
Thank you. So you're unable to answer that. So thank you, Phil.
So your amendment, Councillor McCulloch. I haven't asked for a seconder yet, but I had to open the debate with the mover and the seconder. I'll just give everyone the opportunity to read it because I haven't had a chance to read it yet. So in essence, as I understand it, Councillor McCulloch, you're requesting native screening around the training field fences, but not around the perimeter of the block. Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that amendment?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, and the first one with item 1, part 1 to be omitted.
That's about the hours.
The hours that would then stand as per the officer recommendation.
Thank you. I have a seconder for that amendment. Councillor Jones. Is there anyone against? You've got 3 minutes to debate your amendment. Thank you, Councillor McCulloch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillors, we've seen this dog training facility previously on a property where there was some confusion as to the classification, and the applicant spent considerable money in the purchase of the property, the DA, and all the correct.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. We're talking to the amendment only.
Thank you. If we could stay on the amendment. Thank
Sorry,
you.
I was just giving some background. So,
Thank you.
councillors, I will just speak to those. So, part one, item one, the omitting that, councillors, the acoustic reports clearly show that there would be no issue, even with up to 16 dogs on either one of the training fields at any one time. So those limitations of the hours do restrict a business, especially with this dog training business, whereby possibly in the hotter summer months, the applicant can provide some of those dog training sessions in the cooler of the evening, allowing people after work to come and be part of that. The numbers of cars, it's not a great number at any one time. It's just off Tonkin Highway, which is a very, very busy highway, as we know. So really, there's no merit there if the applicant can still comply and is well within those limits with the acoustic reports. So that's why I have omitted that item to run as per the officer's recommendation. The second part where I have omitted around the perimeter of the lot boundary fencing, it's approximately 1.6 kilometres. That's hundreds of plants. That could be 500 or 600 trees or native bushes. It's thousands of dollars. It's a huge amount of water. The soil is very sandy, and I have been out there and walked around the property. So those considerations around water usage and reticulation costs are considerable for a business. And the department we're seeing with DEWA are clamping down on bore water usage. And heading towards 2024, DEWA are looking at, through that Swan Coastal Plain, at least a 10% reduction in those bore usages.
Sorry, Councillor McCullough, you've got 30 seconds left.
Thank you. The aquifers are not replenishing as fast as they could in the past as well. So if we take all those things into consideration, it is a cost impost on a business who's struggling to get up and running. And the properties that are closest, the first one is 700 metres across Tonkin Highway, very busy highway. The second, 1 kilometre across Tonkin Highway, a railway line and Mewshay South Road. And the third property, 1.5 kilometres away, just for your consideration.
Thank you,
I
Councillor
encourage you to
McCullough.
support my amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Jones is the second of the amendment.
I don't have anything else to add. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Speaker against the amendment, Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I don't disagree with Councillor McCulloch that there'll be no issues from an acoustic point of view. But Mr. Mayor, that's not the only thing that impacts on amenity. Mr. Mayor, when you buy a rural property, you don't expect to have a business next door, whether how far that is away from you, operating up to 10 o'clock at nights with cars coming and going. Mr. Mayor, there's not many rural properties that'll have a 6-foot chain wire fence around it. When you buy a rural property, you don't expect to be living next to that. And again, Mr. Mayor, native plants once they've got going, my understanding is you don't need to water them, otherwise why are all our reserves still alive as well?
Thank you. Speaker for the amendment, Councillor Henderson.
Briefly, councillors, one of the issues I have with the proposal is the perimeter tree planting. If you have a look at that map on page 191, the eastern side of the block is in fact very close to a significant waterway, the Ellenbrook, and that tributary has over many years suffered much impact. In my past life on Perth NRM, we spent a lot of time on that matter. The point is, if you plant trees there, you're going to have to water them. The water, you're going to have to give them nutrients. The water may come from a treatment unit on site, may come from groundwater, multiple sources. Point is that it will bring water closer to that Ellenbrook system, and the potential impacts of that are well known. So I do believe that aspect alone concerns me, but also the cost to do that perimeter planting would be very, very significant on an operation which is effectively a rural activity. It won't be a huge multi-million-dollar outcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker against the amendment. Question, Councillor Congdon.
I'm sorry to ask all these questions. Question through you to Mr. Coaten. There was commentary a moment ago about you can plant native plants, you don't have to water them. When we plant native trees, do we water them in the first instance to get them established?
We normally do water them to get them
established. And can you tell me how much water would be put on a native tree?
Not to hand, I don't unfortunately know.
I won't ask you to go to Bunnings for the gift card. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Speaker, question, Councillor Bowman.
Mr. Mayor, where in the recommendation does it say trees? And the second one is, Mr. Mayor, to the staff, once the natives are established after, I think, 2 years, which is what I said in my debate, do we go and continue to water?
Mr. Coaten.
No, we don't.
Thank you. Speaker for the amendment, Councillor Congdon.
I'll speak to the amendment, Mr. Mayor. As I've been asking the questions about the native planting, which isn't specified to be trees or otherwise, and because it's not to trees or otherwise, we have to look at the applicant having to water a native plant to approximately 1.5 kilometres. I think the impost on the applicant far exceeds the gain. I see that the planting around the perimeter of the training field fence is appropriate, but as to the balance of the block, and looking at the photograph and the drawing, the schematic drawing, it's almost looking like it's in the Sahara somewhere. It looks like nothing around it. It's basically, there's not a lot of inhabitants that sit here except maybe native fauna. So I'm a little bit surprised why it needs to be a planting all the way around 1.5 perimeter fence to stop people looking in, unless they're going to walk in the other paddocks to stick their head over the fence, or the cows might want to have a look. And there's about 1,000 of those.
Speaker against the amendment. Any other speakers for or against the amendment, please, councillors? Being no other speakers, you will write a reply. Thank you, Councillor McCulloch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, councillors, I do encourage you to support these amendments. We are about supporting our small businesses. We're also about looking at, as a dog training facility, with the issues that we have through the city in regards to management of dogs and such. This is a great addition, and will benefit our City of Swan ratepayers into the future as well. The land is very desolate out there. It is just out at the end of nowhere, and as I've said, I walked around, and if I suffered an injury, I'd probably have to yell for a very long time before anyone could even hear me. So look, I would encourage you to support this so that this applicant can get on with what he's going to do. It's a comprehensive plan. It's thoroughly thought out, and I think that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm now going to put the amendment as moved by Councillor McCulloch. It's on the screen, councillors. Those in favour? I have Councillor Jones, Councillor Pradovnik, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Singh, Councillor Congdon, myself, Councillor Parry, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson and Councillor McCulloch. I believe that is 10. The amendment is carried. Those against were Councillor Bowman, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Knight and Councillor Richardson, which is 5. The amendment now becomes part of the substantive motion. I'm looking for a speaker for the motion. Speaker against the motion. Any other speakers for or against the motion? Then you're right to reply. If you don't wish to have a right to reply, Councillor Bowman, then I'm going to put the motion as amended. Those in favour? I have Councillor Jones, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Prodovnik, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Singh, Councillor Congdon, myself, Councillor Parry, Councillor Knight, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson, Councillor Richardson and Councillor McCulloch. I make that 14. One against, Councillor Catalano. That takes us to the next item. Thank you, councillors. It's item 4.6. It's on page 7 of the run sheet. It's on page 276 of the agenda. And Councillor Congdon.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. That the proposed motion by myself is the council resolves to adopt the staff recommendations subject to the modifications to the recommended conditions as follows. 1, 3.8 parking bays located on the northeast corner adjacent to Wanderer Way being removed and replaced with landscaping showing a minimum of 3 mature shade trees. 2, 6, delete the following: the zebra crossing located adjacent to the southern building relocated to the west so it aligns directly with the pedestrian footpath abutting the convenience store and fast food outlet. 3, 11. All articulated service vehicles, including fuel tankers, shall access the site via the crossover Wanderer Way and egress site via the crossover to Mayfield Drive. Record the reason for changing the odds recommendation to achieve a design outcome that balances improved amenity with functional needs of the development.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Parry. Is there anyone against? Being no one against, I declare that item carried.
Okay.
That takes us to the next item. It's item 4.7, proposed telecommunications infrastructure. It's on page 8 of your run sheet and page 321 of the agenda. Councillor Catalano.
Thank you. The council resolved to 1, refuse approval for the proposed telecommunications infrastructure at Lot 1, number 131, Sacramento Avenue, Beechboro. 2, advise the applicant owners of the resolution of council. 3, record the reasons for changing the officer's recommendation are that 1, the proposed 25-metre high mobile phone tower adversely impacts on the amenity of this part of Beechboro, which is predominantly residential, and 2, the adverse impacts of the mobile phone tower outweigh the benefits to mobile users in Beechboro and provide no improvement in suburbs such as Caversham and Dayton that are badly affected by poor mobile phone coverage.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Knight. Is there anyone against? Question, Councillor Bowman.
Through you, Mr Mayor, to the staff. Did the applicant actually look at alternatives? Or is this the only site they looked at?
Are you aware of that, Mr Russell?
Through Mr Mayor, the applicant did look at other alternatives within the locality before you indicates that they had looked at other alternatives.
I'll ask again, is there anyone against? You're against, Councillor Henderson. You wish to debate it? Then Councillor Catalano, you have 3 minutes to open your debate. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. There were 15 submissions to this proposal, the online submissions through Have You Say, and they were quite comprehensive. And they looked at the adverse impact to the amenity of what is effectively, I mean, it is really a residential suburb. There was also the health aspects, and there was impact on the property values of having the infrastructure in the middle of their suburb. The health issues, they say that there may. It's not conclusive that there aren't health impacts from these towers, actually, from people living within a 200-metre radius of the tower, such as this. But the main issue that we're talking about today is the planning side of it and the impact on visual amenity. Now, the thing is, it does have to be a weighing up process. I mean, I looked at a few SAT cases, and it is really a weighing up process for, providing internet or mobile service, and actually that impact on visual amenity of the community. Now, or that suburb. Now, the real issue here is that tower and the provision of service of that tower is confined to a very small area, and it's just that Beechboro area between Lord Street, Reed Highway, Beechboro Road and Benalla Road. And the thing is that most of the people I spoke to, when I spoke to the people about their internet, their mobile service in that area, they were saying that there wasn't that many problems with it.
You have 1 minute.
So the main thing is that we've got enormous problems with lack of mobile coverage and internet coverage in the new suburbs of Caversham and Dayton. So I think, the other thing about it is the state government does have a policy, a planning policy, that basically that says that we shouldn't be encouraging proliferation of this kind of infrastructure all over the place. And so I suggest that what should happen is Telstra is a big corporation, and they should go back and look at a tower that can really service the area, the full extent of the area, and that tower should be looked at as being located on Whiteman Park or along the freeways, where it doesn't have that visual impact on amenity as well. So it's like what we need there is not piecemeal and band-aid solutions. What we need is a proper
Thank you, Councillor
mobile
Carbone.
service for the area.
Councillor Knight is the seconder.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I mean, there seems to be like the thin end of the wedge with these towers. I mean, we're on 5G at the moment. What happens if we get to 7 or 8G? What happens if that tower needs to be increased to 50 metres or higher? I mean, I don't think that's fair to put that next to someone's house in a little suburb. And I think Telstra is more than capable of finding solutions that will cover a wider area with less impact on these suburbs. So please support this and try and find a better option. Ask them to find a better option for relocating this tower. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson speaking against.
Okay, councillors, I'll put my engineering hat on in this game and get down to the tin tacks. First things first, the electromagnetic energy that we're talking about, look on page 335, fits into the requirements for the energy that fits within the safety measurements that are required to operate these facilities. Next question raised in debate just now is about, will these towers get higher and bigger with future G? Well, in fact, no, they won't. What happens, councillors, is that we have, with higher frequencies, you end up with much tighter cell situations, cells literally every 100 odd metres to be able to make it work. But they are not high and big things. They might sit on someone's eve or whatever. So that's not an argument to consider. Property value is, I keep getting told it's not a planning matter. The health issues, we could talk about those all day. This has been studied to death all around the world, and it's absolutely a known technical fact that you will not get any ionisation of human tissue with the power levels that are used at these frequencies, and the consequence of that is that with no ionisation, it's been shown that it's safe. So really, the only issue, councillors, is about the amenity. That's really the only issue. And the point is, we fought one of these up in Herne Hill, up on one of the parks up there, and I think we spent about $60,000.
You have 1 minute left, thank you.
And lost. And why do we lose? Because you have to operate these things within a cell arrangement. So if you consider a whole pile of honeycomb cells, if you don't sit roughly in the middle of that cell, it means one of the other towers has got to make up for it. And the consequences of that is you end up with a failed system if you don't have a proper cell structure. So for this to be effective, you have very limited ability as to where you can put these towers. And the consequences of that are that people who want communications, we all want it. I mean, we'd all scream if we couldn't get our comms in here and our texts didn't work, wouldn't we? So the guts of it is quite simple. People want it, people need it, and people's amenity gets impacted when they get one next to them, or perhaps for the wrong reasons. An optical one, yes, but for the other reasons, I can't support.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson.
Thank you,
That's your time. Speaker for the motion. Any other speakers for or against? Question, Councillor Bowman.
Mr. Mayor, it feels like a while ago, but can staff just advise, did we not have an item that came up a little while ago on a tower? It was in Middle Swan, Great Northern Highway, and was it not backing onto residential properties? Thank you.
Mr. Russell.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. We did have one such tower. Circumstances were similar in the disposition of the tower facility proximate to residential properties, very similar to this.
Thank you. Any other speakers for or against? Then Councillor Catalano, your right of reply, please.
Thank you. Yes, well, the thing is that Beechboro has a lot more residents than residential buildings and is much more of a residential suburb than either Herne Hill or Middle Swan. This facility is right in the middle of it. So it's going to impact a lot of people, some people in a real extreme way, in terms of that power pole is like, or that tower is right across from their house. The thing is that it's just not a big enough area. The service that this tower is providing just doesn't provide for a big enough area. And the thing is that Telstra need to be getting on with providing services to Caversham that don't have any mobile service provision, or that have very poor mobile service provision. I just think that this is it's a case of, well, we've got they've got some sort of little tiny telecoms facility there that doesn't involve any towers or anything like that. So, well, we might as well just use that spot, when actually they need to be thinking about the bigger picture and providing a lot more telecommunication infrastructure throughout the area. And I'm sure that in getting the provision up for Caversham and Dayton, that when they do that, that Beechboro and this part of Beechboro will be included in it as well, so that in fact there won't be any need for this tower. And I think that we need to go back to Telstra and put that argument to them. It's just the balance is not right. It is too much of a built-up urban area.
You have 1 minute left. Thank
It's not like any of the sites that they even gave us, where they said that he sent me some examples. I think there was one in Balga, which was probably a little bit closer, but I mean, you know, what does that say about our suburb of Beechboro? I mean, you know, I'd like to see that we don't have these kind of infrastructures right in the middle of the suburb, and that we can actually have them on the edge of the suburb, where they don't create such a visual disturbance, or they don't negatively impact on the amenity of the suburb. I mean, this is smack bang right in the middle of the suburb. It's something we shouldn't be agreeing to, and we should oppose it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Catalano. I'll now put that motion. Those in favour? I have Councillor Jones, Councillor Prodovnik, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Singh, Councillor Catalano, myself, Councillor Knight, and Councillor Richardson. I think that was 9, but so the motion is carried, and those against were Councillors Bowman, Councillor Congdon, Councillor Parry, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson, and Councillor McCulloch. The motion is passed 9-6. Councillors, that takes us to the next item, which is item 7.3, Council Committee Matters. It's on page 545, and Councillor Congdon, you've got a
Thank you,
motion.
Mr Mayor. Look, Mr Mayor, I would formally request that we could defer this item until the meeting of February, and if you require a reason.
That'd be nice.
Okay. At this particular time in space, there have been no nominations for any of these committees from councillors, and I think a lot of councillors would not have delved into the item, I think, understanding that there were requirements to present as nominations, and I think Councillor Singh probably would need an opportunity to go through some of these items to understand exactly what they do.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for a deferment till February? Councillor Zanino. Is there anyone against? You're against, Councillor Bowman. You wish to debate it? Thank you. And Councillor Congdon, you've got 3 minutes for your debate. Thank you.
I don't need the 3 minutes, Mr Mayor. Thank you. I think I've just summed up where I was, and I'll just repeat that not one member of this council nominated for any one of the positions that are listed in this particular item.
Thank you. Councillor Zanino as the seconder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I have nothing further to add.
Thank you. Speaking against, Councillor Bowman.
I am, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, 2 of the items have got nothing to do with appointment to committees. So I can't understand why we would defer that, especially when one of them is the Audit Committee with the proposed schedule of meeting dates, which would be Tuesday the 14th of February. It would be nice for those committee members to know before the early February if they've got a meeting in February. Mr Mayor, my apologies if I've missed it, but I didn't see any correspondence come out to any councillors, but I have been getting a lot more emails than normal in this week asking that we had to submit nominations. My understanding that hasn't been the normal process. When I first got elected on council, we were able to nominate on the night as well. And as such, with the lack of correction, I didn't see where we had to nominate beforehand.
Thank you. Or if councillors want to nominate from the floor tonight, I'm happy to take that, but we'll have to deal with the current motion before us. Speaker for the deferral? Speaker against the deferral? Councillor Johnson?
Councillors, at this stage, I'm neither for nor against, but I realise I'm going to have to vote one way or the other. The usual practice is that we basically nominate in the meeting. There's never been a process before of sending in a nomination to be on a committee when there's a vacancy, so I don't think there's any need to defer him. But there's one councillor I would like to hear from, and that's Councillor Singh. I'd really like to know what Councillor Singh's opinion is, because, you know, whether you would prefer Councillor Singh to wait until February, or do you want to do it now? I'm not asking you now. If you want to speak, you can.
Any other speakers for or against? Then I'll enter the debate. If there's no other speakers, I'll hand the chair to you. Thanks, Councillor Congdon. I think with the amount of agenda items we've had to consider this month, councillors, and to me, it says it all at the top of page 546, to enable the new elected member the opportunity to nominate for committee membership if they wish. The vacant positions are now presented for nomination to all councillors. So it's in the agenda that nominations were open. Not one councillor nominated to go on those number of committees. And what the deferment motion is to give everyone the opportunity over the next month and a half before we come back is to consider those positions. I noticed that some have left vacant by former councillor Kylie leaving, and some current councillors have declined to stay on those committees. So it gives everyone the opportunity of looking at them, see if it takes your interest, if you've got an interest in those fields, and that's why I'm supporting the deferment.
Mr. Mayor, can I suggest, just in case something happens, can we split 1, 2, since vote together?
I've got to deal with the motion before myself.
All right, fine. No worries.
Your right of reply. Thank you, Councillor Congdon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I don't want to look at a play on words, Councillor Bowman, but you know, we have an audit committee meeting, and we all know how intense an audit committee is, and we know how difficult that audit committee can be in understanding all of the content involved in there. The roadwise advisory group, you're probably quite right. There is a member and a deputy member required, and it might not be a committee, but it's an advisory group. We have the Eastern Region Metropolitan Council looking at a deputy member for that. So yes, it is a committee. Yes, it is an external body. And then we have the development assessment panels. Each of these in their own right, let alone the Metropolitan Regional Road Group, each of these in their own right have got complexities involved for people to put their hand up, and meeting dates that are required to have a look at, where they conflict with any other meetings that any other member might be engaged with. And that could be your own external bodies that you could be on, which is external groups not associated with the city, and or those who may have a particular work practice that requires them to do a night shift, day shift, or otherwise shift associated with. And Mr. Mayor, we're talking here of February. We don't have any meetings in January at the MRC. We don't have any meetings, I understand, for our audit committee in January. There are another I think the 14th of February is a tender. Sorry, not the tender. The audit committee is the 14th of February and the 9th of May. All those can be met with the agenda going to February, and also I think there's the consideration, as I said before, that the newest member would like to get his head around some of these committees.
Thank you. I'll now put the deferment to the vote. Those in favour. I have Councillor Jones, Councillor Prodovnik, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Congdon, myself, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson, Councillor Richardson, and Councillor McCulloch, which I think was 9. Those against are Councillor Bowman, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Singh, Councillor Parry, and Councillor Knight, which is 6. The deferment is passed 9-6. Councillors, that takes us to the next item. It's item 2.1, new policy, electronic attendance at meetings, and you've got a motion, Councillor Bowman.
I have, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, it's resolved to adopt the policy with a few amendments, deleting from clause 2, scope the following: an agenda forum and a council briefing session. Add the following after a meeting of committee of council where it has delegated authority. Add the following clause 3.1.5. The mayor is not permitted to approve any request where it's not fully complied with all the requirements of 3.1. Reword clause 3.5.1 as follows: elected members and committee members may only attend a meeting by electronic means, provided they not attend more than half that category of meeting as described in clause 2 in the previous 12 months by this method. This includes the proposed meeting, and delete clause 3.5. My reason, Mr. Mayor, is change in attendance by electronic means is not the most effective and efficient option, and council's preference is that all councillors attend in person. Legislative changes only include council and committee meetings, decision-making forums, and the policy should be limited to only these.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Jones, is there anyone against? There is. You wish to debate it? Thank you. Councillor Bowman, you have 3 minutes to open your debate.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I think local government might have been caught on the hop when the minister came out and said, let's continue allowing councillors to attend council meetings by electronic means. Mr. Mayor, I don't believe it is the most effective and efficient way to conduct business. Mr Mayor, we have problems every time with our electronic meetings. Mr Mayor, the Act says you only have to allow for decision makings. And Mr Mayor, the reason why I've excluded the others is because I think it's more important for those councillors to be here. Other small changes, just taking out some ambiguity. Elected members can only attend up to half of that category. So you can't not attend any council meetings but come to all the committee meetings. It was up to half. So I wanted to make sure that was included. But Mr Mayor, that was the main reason to those changes. We want everyone in this chamber.
Thank you. Councillor Jones is a seconder.
I don't have anything else to add, Mr Mayor. Thanks.
Thank you. Speaker against the motion. Councillor Podovnik.
I'm actually speaking in support of the officer's recommendation. I think it actually gets the balance right. This is a part-time job and with work mainly done at night, but sometimes we are invited to meetings during the day, and being able to Zoom in means that those who work during the day can participate. A lot of people work full-time and have other commitments. We can't physically go to every meeting. We are invited to, but allowing more online participation will make it easier to attend more meetings when people are juggling work and other commitments. The officer's recommendation provides more flexibility. We can and should provide that flexibility in this day and age. The staff's recommendation allows flexibility to people who have other commitments, and I think that's really important to consider. Why would you give us less flexibility? Surely as adults, we can decide when we come to work and how we're going to juggle our own workloads. We need to sort of have that flexibility, I feel. If I decided that from tonight, I'm not going to attend any council briefings, if I decide I'm going to watch all the agenda forums online because they are live and they're online, and if I don't attend in person any of the briefing sessions, I actually won't lose my job as a councillor. The only meeting I'm legally required to attend as a councillor is council meetings, and we're not allowed to miss 3 of those in a row. How councillors choose to attend council briefings and agenda forums should be as flexible as the officer's recommendation allows it to be, with an option of up to 50% online participation if that councillor chooses to. Our technology allows it. The Local Government Act doesn't forbid it. Please support the officer's recommendation and vote against this motion.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion.
Got a question.
Question, Councillor Johnson.
Just looking at the scope of the policy, and it says an ordinary meeting of council, special meeting, a meeting of a committee of council, a meeting of an audit committee, an agenda forum, a council briefing session. So the policy does not cover, even if amended in the way Councillor Bowman is proposing, does not cover ad hoc dial-in meetings or phone meetings with staff. Is that right? So we can still, if we organise a meeting at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we can to discuss fence sites in Guildford, we can dial in.
My understanding, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Thanks.
Speaker for the motion. Speaker against the motion. No other speakers for or against. Then Councillor Bowman, you're right to reply. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, when I signed up for this council, I understood that most Wednesday nights, if not every Wednesday night, would be taken up for council meetings, briefings and agenda forums. Mr Mayor, agenda forums and council briefings, I'd be happy to prove incorrect, either 5:30 or 6 o'clock, pretty well every Wednesday night, not during the day. Mr Mayor, COVID was a wonderful thing, not where organisations change things and use that as an excuse. The department thought that there was some good benefits there in to try and encourage more participation in the decision making, and that's why they changed the legislation. Mr Mayor, we need to look at the impact to the rest of the councillors as well when someone's not here. It slows down the meeting. We can't hear all the time. There's other issues there. It's harder to chair as well, and that's why I've made these small amendments to make sure that we get the best way of going forward with this.
Thank you. I'm now going to put the motion. Those in favour of Councillor Jones, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Singh, Councillor Knight and Councillor Richardson. I make that 7. I'll ask those against the motion to raise their hands. Of Councillor Prodovnik, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Congdon, myself, Councillor Parry, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson, and Councillor McCulloch, which is 8. The motion is lost. Did I hear you say you foreshadowed the officer's recommendation, Councillor Prodovnik? You're
Yes.
seconding that, Councillor McCulloch. Is there anyone against? I'll just ask if there's anyone against first. Okay, well, take the amendment, see if it's acceptable to the mover and the seconder. If not, we'll have to debate it if you get a seconder after they've spoken.
Thank you, Mayor. In the policy on page 47, down the bottom at 3.1.3 C, should that perhaps be confirmation and declaration at the meeting? Well, confirmation isn't a declaration. That's why I asked the question.
Perhaps I'll get the CEO to answer it.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just noting that where you have statutory obligations to make a declaration, they don't need to be in the policy.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll ask again. Is there anyone against the motion? You've got a question, Councillor Bowman. Thank you. Question?
Through Mr Mayor to the CEO, can the CEO explain to me how it will actually work with, for example, briefing sessions, where under this policy, a councillor will be able to attend half the briefing sessions electronically? I assume that does not include when they're absent, leave of absence, or don't turn up. How do you work out when it gets to 50%? Because if they don't come to 4, and then there's only 4 more left, how does that work? Because I can't see how you can actually know when it's 50%. And therefore, at the end of the year, where they've had more than 50% at online, is there just a smack on the wrist, or there is something else?
Thank you, Mr CEO.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Not having been involved in the draft of the policy, I can only give you advice as I would see it working. Firstly, there's a standard number of meetings, agenda forums, etc. each year. Therefore, you'd be able to divide 10 meetings, which is what our standard is, into 5 attended in person, 5 not attended in person. If you had attended your quota externally, then you wouldn't be allowed to participate in another one online. You could, as mentioned earlier on, watch it on YouTube, but you wouldn't be allowed to participate in that meeting. We would just need to make sure, again, with the upgrade of the audio visual, so I think it's going to happen as we plan in April, May, that we can have multiple persons on the screen. But I believe that's what you would have done during COVID, I presume, at that particular time.
Mr Mayor, I specifically said briefings. So agenda forums, we know how many. Briefings, very hard to know. They get cancelled, they get added. And not every Wednesday night when we haven't got a council meeting or agenda forum. So how are we going to know how many briefings there are? And then when we get 3/4 of the way through the year, if a council's already gone to 7, 8 online and only come to 2 or 3 in person, and then doesn't come to others, they'll be well and truly over the 50%. So I can't understand how that will be worked out.
Thank you, Mr.
Again,
CEO.
through the chair, I can only give you, that's my expectation, that we would have each month 1 briefing. That we're going to come back to the section, we're having a standard 1 briefing. There may be special briefings that the council asks for during the course of the year. I would have to take that on a case-by-case basis. But I think the policy allows enough flexibility to say, right, 10 briefings, 5 in person, 5 external. If there's an additional briefing, then it would be up for consideration. But I don't see that being much of an impediment.
I've got a
question, Councillor Prodovnik.
Is it my understanding that once council makes a decision, it goes over to the administration and you'll work out all of those details?
Well, the policy will be interpreted by the staff, yes.
Potentially not something we need to worry about tonight. I'm assuming that
Well,
staff will
Councillor
work it out.
Bowman's entitled to ask questions as to the detail of the policy. This is the correct time to do it before we adopt it. But being a new policy, it can always be amended as we see fit if something arises.
What I'm asking is, it's not really our role to determine that, is it? It moves on to administration. I'm just trying to understand the difference.
Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council sets policy where it does involve some interpretation, then guidance provided by the staff. But the principles for the policy are what we would follow. Picking up the earlier point I arranged, Mr. Mayor, as this was obviously a new policy, during the course of the year, by way of custom and practice, became some need to bring back an amendment to the council. It doesn't stop us any time or council seeking an amendment to the policy.
So I'll ask Councillor Henderson a question.
Yes, another question. I'm sorry, Mayor. 3.3.3, page 48. I would like to know how it is that staff determined a 15-minute number, and what happens if you can't do it in 15 minutes? I just think it's a superfluous paragraph, and that's why I asked the question.
Mr. CEO.
Thank you. So, Mr. Mayor, each meeting would have a meeting date. I think that probably 15 minutes is a bit too prescriptive. If anything, I'd say at least 5 minutes prior to the start of the meeting, just to allow for people to know they're there. Certainly for the start of a forum, as the mayor for, say, an agenda briefing, the mayor would need to announce which councillors are online. We'd want to know 5 minutes beforehand that we're all up. We saw the other night just some of the difficulties of dialing in Councillor Parry at the last minute. So if you would look for a minor member to join the meeting, say at least 5 minutes prior to the meeting.
I have a question, Mr. Mayor.
Question, Councillor Congdon.
Mr. Mayor, to the CEO, on that same note, a lot of us are using Teams or Zoom are only led into a meeting by the authorised personnel. So if the authorised personnel are going to press the button at 5 minutes to or 2 minutes to, that's what happens, doesn't it?
Mr. CEO.
Through the chair, you'd have a meeting invite. You would go into a waiting room at that point in time. You've actually joined the meeting. You were sitting in the waiting room. The meeting administrator would then bring you into the meeting as they sit there. And it may be that we're waiting for a setup or something else to occur. So I wouldn't, quite frankly, I'd hope you use the expression, get wrapped around the axles about the mechanics of it. But saying we'd like you there at least 5 minutes before the start of the meeting to know that people are going to attend if they are doing so electronically.
Any other questions? Councillor
Henderson. So in respect of that, then how about I propose that we amend 3.3.3, Mr. Mayor, to ensure that they are able to join the meeting 5 minutes prior to commencement.
Thank you. I think that's fair and reasonable. Do you have a seconder? You can't second it, Councillor Jones. Oh, sorry, you second the last motion. Sorry, Councillor McCulloch seconded this one. So you're seconding it. Is there anyone against changing the 15 minutes? Well, I'll ask the mover and the seconder against changing the 15 minutes to 5 minutes. Councillor Brodovnik or Councillor McCulloch? No issues? No issues. Thank you. Well, that will become part of the policy in 3.3.3 to ensure they join the minute 5 minutes prior to the commencement of the actual meeting. I'll ask again, is there any speaker against the motion? You wish to speak against it, Councillor Bowman? Thank you. You've got 3 minutes to open your debate, Councillor Brodovnik.
Going to debate it.
Councillor McCulloch is the seconder. No, nothing. Thank you. Councillor Bowman as the speaking against.
Mr. Mayor, as we've already just seen, there's a bit of unknown, a bit of ambiguity. I can see there's going to be problems for the CEO and even staff. And as such, I'm not for this policy. I think there needs to be a few things cleaned up as well. Mr. Mayor, as I said before, when we have those who join the meeting via Teams, Zoom or whatever we do these days, it actually creates a much harder meeting, one to chair, two to hear. We get complaints from members of the public as well, and as such, I don't agree with the policy as written.
Thank you. Any other speakers for or against, councillors? Being no other speakers, your right to reply, Councillor Podovnik.
I guess that the only thing I'd say to that is it looks like we're going to improve our audio anyway and try to strive for better. That's what it sounds like it's going to be happening.
Thank you. I'll now put the officer's recommendation. Those in favour. I have Councillor Jones, Councillor Podovnik, Councillor Singh, Councillor Congdon, myself, Councillor Parry, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson and Councillor McCulloch, which I make is 9. The motion is passed. Those against were Councillors Bowman, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Knight and Councillor Richardson, which is 6. The motion's passed 9-6. Councillors, that takes us to item 7.1. It's on page 11 of the run sheet, and I'm required to read out the following. It's item 7.1, proposed local law, bushfire brigades. It's on page 507 of your agenda. And the purpose of this local law is to provide for the establishment, organisation and maintenance, administration and funding of bushfire brigades. And the effect of this local law is that bushfire brigades will be organised and managed to comply with this local law. Thank you. That now takes us to item C 1.3, Councillor Podovnik, Wheat Park Playground Equipment. On the last one? Oh, I was just advised I had to read it out. So it's moved Councillor Congdon, seconded Councillor Parry. Is there anyone against? Being no one against, I declare it carried. Now we'll move to item C 1.3, Councillor Podovnik, Wheat Park Playground Equipment. It's on page 12 of the run sheet. Thank you.
Okay, so that council resolved to request the CEO to investigate options at Wheat Park that include extending the slide and adding another section to flatten the end and slow people down, replace the metal slide with a plastic slide, installing a shade sail over the playground and particularly over the slide to ensure it doesn't get too hot, installing more hand grips to the climbing wall, safety proofing the landing box that sits next to the climbing wall by putting mesh to prevent children from walking in from the scaffolding side and falling through the climbing wall side. Request that this work is implemented as a priority with funds to come from a budget adjustment this financial year if necessary.
Thank you. You've got to read out your reason. Thank you, Councillor Podovnik.
Okay, parents have complained the slide is too hot and there's nothing in the design to stop children from coming down it too fast. More shade and a climbing wall that is easier for people to use will encourage more families to come and use the space. We have a duty of care to our community to ensure that there are no public liability issues for users of the park. The designs may have passed the Australian Standards test, but we need to tweak aspects of the design to make it more practical and safer for people to use.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Zanino. Is there anyone against? Councillor Catalano, do you wish to debate it? No. Councillor Johnson? Yes. Thank you. You've got 3 minutes for your debate. Thank you, Councillor Podovnik.
This motion simply asks the CEO to investigate what can be done to fix some design problems that have been repeatedly drawn to our attention. A lot of complaints came in on social media when the slide was officially opened in October last year, and the photo I circulated to all councillors came from someone whose child had been hurt. The text message I got with that photo read, "Sitting at Camberang and friend showed me her child's back after being ejected from the slide at Wheat Park. Poor child was crying and traumatised by what happened. I hate to bring a downer on the park opening, but this slide is causing problems." A year later, Facebook feedback overwhelmingly tells us kids are getting burnt, hurting their backs and arms as they land on a pile of wood chips. A few people made the comment, risk in play is important for a child's development on many levels. That if we wrap kids up in cotton wool, they don't learn how to take risks or learn consequences. But overwhelmingly, people recognise this issue goes beyond risk in play into the danger zone, where kids were actually getting hurt, and that's what we're being asked to address tonight. We have an opportunity to tweak the design and do some relatively small things to fix this. Tonight I'm asking this to be done as an adjustment in our maintenance budget as part of the mid-year review. Staff confirmed we've been given estimates in the report, and the mesh and hand grips may not cost as much as what has been stated, but regardless of the stated cost, it's a small amount to spend comparatively when you look at how much has been spent building the 2 play areas. Lottery West gave us a $1.3 million grant to build the youth hangout zone, and the Stefanelli family donated $1 million to build the playground for little kids. That's $2.3 million worth of play equipment gifted to the City of Swan by grants and donations. That's a big investment into Midland. And tonight I'm asking Council to make a comparatively small investment to fix a few design failings people are asking us to fix. Staff have confirmed that Facebook is not considered as an official complaints channel in the city's record keeping. But the feedback on Facebook this week was overwhelming. 205 comments over 4 Facebook pages. How many times do we need to be told by families kids are hurting their backs, necks and tailbones using this slide? And how many parents have to tell us they've seen a toddler nearly fall through a 2-metre high hole at the top of a climbing wall before we understand there may be a public liability issue here? Comments like Annette's, it's such a shame as the slide has so much potential, but most people I know wouldn't take their kids there. If I was to sum up this whole issue, it would be this comment from the City of Swan's Facebook page in September 2021. It reads, "I was going to check it out until I read the comments." Miranda responds, "My son enjoys that play space, but the slide is dangerous. Other than that, I think it's a great little space." And it is a great little space. Let's fix the small things we need to so more families use it. Please support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Podovnik. Well timed. Councillor Zanino is the seconder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillors, I rise to support Councillor Podovnik's motion. She's actually given us a fairly extensive report on what she has experienced, and I'm not going to add a lot more. I think that the City of Swan has spent a lot of money, millions of dollars, and we have major infrastructure. This motion is basically just requesting the CEO to investigate, and at the end of the day, if there are problems, and obviously from the reports that we're getting, if there is a problem, obviously it needs to be fixed. We can't just have major infrastructure, which has cost ratepayers millions of dollars, sitting there not being used. So, councillors, I urge you to support this, as it is merely requesting the CEO to investigate, and obviously, hopefully, it's not going to cost that much if the problems are there to be fixed. So, I ask you to support this motion.
Thank you. Question, Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To staff, to Mr. Coaten, what would the cost of removing that slide be?
We haven't done an estimate on moving it. We've just done some very rough estimates based on the actual notice of motion itself. So we haven't done an estimate on moving it.
What would the cost be to remove it altogether?
To remove it altogether, I don't have. Again, we haven't costed that. It would obviously be considerably less than the cost that's in the report for the replacement
is there a
and modification.
rough amount?
I wouldn't want to provide information to council that may not be correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's perhaps.
Is it possible to get a quote for what that would be to remove that slide?
Yes, it would. It certainly would be possible, Mr. Mayor, to
As
get
part
a
of the
quote.
report. Thank you.
Well, I think that's what part of the investigation could come back to council. Councillor Bowman, you should speak against it. Questions?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, can the staff advise, obviously, playgrounds are required to be checked every 3 or 6 months. There would have been a report. Did that report, and by qualified people that expect it, did that report identify any non-compliance?
Mr. Coaten?
Playgrounds are generally inspected on a monthly basis. I don't have the reports to hand for this playground since it has been in place, but the normal, and we've got, a couple of hundred playgrounds, the normal process is staff will go there, they'll inspect. If any issues are identified, they raise a work order and correct any issues, but I don't have the inspection reports in front of me for that particular playground.
And Mr. Mayor, my next question, the playground, what age group was it designed for?
Well, the slide in particular, I think, was for about targeting the 6 to 14-year-olds.
And final question, Mr. Mayor, has there been any formal complaints or insurance claims received from the city?
There haven't been any insurance claims. There have been, and I did circulate the information to council. I believe in regards to the slide, there's been 10 complaints have been received by the city.
Questions, Councillor Johnson?
Oh, yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, my question is, have there been any actual accidents reported?
Well, there have been incidents reported of people who say their children were injured on the slide, and I think Councillor Prodovnik referred to one of those in terms of the photo that she circulated where a child had apparently had a scrape on their back.
Question, Mr. Mayor.
Question, Councillor Congdon.
Thank you. To whomever can answer the question, an insurance risk assessment on the slide, has it been done?
Well, not specifically in relation to insurance, but certainly risk assessments have been undertaken on it, yes.
And have they been adverse?
No, that's been found that it meets all requirements.
Councillor Catalano, question?
What kind of complaints do we get from other, do we get any complaints from any other play spaces coming through?
Usually there's not enough playground equipment. Oh, sorry,
Yeah,
Mr. Coaten.
I think you have answered it. We do get complaints about other playground equipment, normally in relation to the perhaps lack of functionality for a certain age group or something like that, but we do get other complaints.
Councillor Henderson was first, followed by Councillor Singh.
Mayor, do we have a sign on the slide that refers to an age group for that slide? And I guess the other aspect of it is that the complaints, have they been of children that have been below or above that age group that the slide's designed for?
Mr. Coaten?
Well, yeah, there is a sign. I don't have the exact wording to hand. The complaints obviously have come from the parents rather than the children themselves, and we don't have a record of the children's ages, but the complaints generally relate to the speed of the slide and the wood chips at the bottom. And while we don't have a breakdown of the ages, I would suggest it would be, from anecdotal feedback, it would be that they're generally of the younger children.
Councillor Singh?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's the same questions the Rod asked. That's the same one. My question is, what's the age group of the kids has receiving the complaint? And is there any sign in the park what's minimum age have to be used that equipments in the park? Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
I don't have the exact wording of the sign. I don't believe it specifies a minimum age that can be used.
Thank you. Councillor Knight?
Thanks, Mayor. Is there any reason why this slide, why we had this slide? I would have thought there would have been an off-the-shelf kind of slide that we would have used. This seems to be constructed purposely for this place. Would that be correct?
Mr. Coaten?
Yeah, the park was designed to replicate, I guess, an old-fashioned backyard feel. And a lot of the equipment is structured in the form of insects, etc. So yes, it was a specifically designed park for that purpose, rather than being bought off the shelf.
Councillor Parry?
To move an amendment, Mr. Mayor, if that's okay.
What's your amendment?
Point 2, request change the wording to request this work to be considered as part of the 23-24 draft budget and or other timeframes as considered by council previously via their policies. No. So what I'm saying is that because of the time that you have to get through the next meeting when they give the report back, you'll have very limited months to deal with it in your budget adjustments. I'm saying move it to 23, 24 draft budget, or the shade sales links it back to the policies that we have in regards to the shade sales that we discussed 3, 4, 5 months ago, give or take. Yes. No, push it back to 23, 24 due to timing issues more than anything else, and plus give staff time to make sure they work through every single issue that you're raising, because I don't think it's appropriate to do it. Well, I think it's appropriate to do the report now, but it can be part of our draft budget discussions later in the year. What I'm trying to... Sorry.
Councillors, I'm being very lenient. Either you've got an amendment, Councillor Parry, or you haven't. My preference was just let's get the report back and then we can make a decision on what we want to do. Well, so is what's on the board now, what your amendment is?
Request that this work to be considered as part of the 23-24 draft budget and or other time frames and policies considered by the council previously.
Okay, I'm going to have to get you to speak a lot slower so the minute clerk gets it down.
And I have a question when you're ready, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, well, see if there's a seconder first.
I should still be allowed to question.
Well, I want to see if this, I want to deal with one thing at a time, to see if this is suitable to the movement.
When you're ready.
Well, I didn't hear that part, sorry. This as policies accepted. You read that point 2. So consider as part of the all policies accepted by councils previously implemented. You're talking about the sage shell policy. So that's your amendment as you wishes. Does the mover and the seconder object to that amendment? You agree? Okay, so the amendment becomes part of the substantial motion. Councillor Congdon, you had a question.
Maybe the amended motion might have fixed my question, Mr. Mayor, because the question is that Councillor Brodovnik has got requested CEO to investigate options, and in 2, request that this work is implemented. How can you implement work when you're looking at something being investigated?
You want to answer that? Because it was done in consultation with Jim.
Mr. Coaten?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. There are some sections of that that are very easy to implement. So starting at the bottom with point E, that is that can be implemented from our minor parts budget. Likewise with Part D, subject to being able to get a suitable contractor, that could be implemented relatively easily and relatively cheaply this financial year. The shade sales, we've already got a program and a council resolution to install shade sales. So that could be done just through the budget adjustment process during this year, subject to being able to get a quote for it. The more expensive parts and perhaps a bit of uncertainty is parts A and B. So it would be perhaps unlikely we would get them done in this financial year anyway. So they would be probably considered as part of depending on the outcomes of our investigation. They would be considered as part of the funding would probably come from the 23-24 budget, so they would be adopted by council as part of that. If we were able to get it done in 22-23, then as the resolution reads, request the works implemented as a priority with funds to come from budget adjustment. So a budget adjustment would come back to council in 22-23 for parts A and or B. So there wouldn't necessarily, the way it is written is it wouldn't necessarily need to be a report back to council, because that part B did say request the work be implemented as a priority, which is what Councillor Prodovnik wanted to undertake.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Further to that, then, is this another question? Is that the item 2 doesn't suggest that this broken down to each segment as you just explained. It says request that this work.
And I think, Mr. Clayton, when you're talking about budget adjustments and priorities, that's now been taken out of the motion by the amendment of Councillor Parry, which is accepted by both the mover and the seconder. Perhaps, and I may be wrong, perhaps if we can, with the agreement of the mover and the seconder, request that any of this work recommended or subject to the report of the CEO be considered. That any of this work subject of the report of the CEO be considered. You've got an objection to that, Councillor Bowman? I'll just get this up, see if it's acceptable to Councillor Prodovnik, and hopefully we can move on to the next item shortly. Yeah. Can we just get this dealt with? Otherwise, everyone will be thinking of different things. Jill, one thing, and Councillor Bowman's next. Does that make any difference, Councillor Prodovnik? You happy to accept that? Well, your first line was request the CEO to investigate options. So I imagine he would come back with a report once he's investigated those options. So both the mover and the second are happy with that. Question, Councillor Bowman first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, we touched on it with a few other questions, but the program for installing shade sails over all our playgrounds, was there a priority for that? And are we now suggesting this will be brought up in priority and other playgrounds in other wards will go down?
Mr. Coaten?
Yeah. This playground already does have shade sails on a lot of it. It doesn't actually have a shade sail on the slide, which is the complaint that we get, or the complaint that's been raised about the shade sail being hot. So the shade sail, as worded in the motion, is particularly over the slide. So yes, this work, to answer your question, yes, this would be work that would be done as part of that program that otherwise wouldn't have been done.
Mr. Mayor, my second part of the question, obviously there's only a limited amount of budget for shade sails every year. That would mean that then another shade sail will drop down. That was budgeted, it was going to be planned for next year in whatever ward, and won't get done. Am I correct?
Well, yeah, that would be obviously subject to council's adoption of the budget. Council could increase the budget in a future year for that purpose, but yes, that's the intent of what you're saying is correct.
Councillor Knight had a question.
Thank you, Mayor. Just looking at A, So we've got extending the slide and adding another section to flatten the end and slow people down. And then B is replacing the metal slide with a plastic slide. So what are we kind of doing there?
Well, it says investigate the options of either A or B.
If we're going to get a plastic slide, will it be a like for like?
You mean the same shape and size?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Well, that'll be subject to the investigation, and I'll just add a comment. In my experience, councillors, having visited many parks, particularly in the Kimberley and the Pilbara, wherever they have plastic slides, some people just like putting a fire underneath it and burning a big hole straight through the middle of it. I think the metal is the way to go, but where they look at making it cooler, changing the angle, let's let the CEO do his investigation and come back with us. So I'll ask again, with the amendment as it now stands, is there anyone against? You wish to debate it, Councillor Johnson? Thank you. No, the whole motion, because the amendment was adopted, agreed to by the mover and the second, which becomes part of the substantial motion. So you wish to speak against the motion? Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Prodovnik, have you spoken to the motion?
I know it was memorable, but yes, I have.
Okay, we've had so much time in between. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. You've got 3 minutes.
I know the Weir Park slide in particular has been the subject of a lot of commentary on social media. However, I can't support the motion given the estimated cost to modify or replace the slide. That's nearly $90,000. While I recognise concerns have been raised by parents over the slide, and thankfully today there have been no injuries reported. Councillors, I've done my own investigations, as you'd expect. I have tested the slide myself. So councillors, when it was first installed and people initially said, oh, it's very fast, I went down it myself and tested it out. Well, as you can see, I'm still here. And then last weekend, having heard more and seen the motion, I've been down it a total of 4 times. As you can see, I've come to no harm. Now, I did it because I wanted to assure myself that it was safe. So I'm convinced it's safe. It is very fast. You do hit the ground with a bump. Now, councillors, we all know a little bit of physics for you. We all know about the experiments of Galileo. You drop a light weight and a heavy weight from a tower that hit the ground at the same time. What that means is that a light child and an 83 kilogram and 63-year-old councillor will both come out the bottom of that slide at the same speed, exact same speed. But the difference is the mass. All right. So in order to understand the force, you have to understand momentum. So it's mass times velocity, which is the same. So the velocity is the same for a child. The mass is much heavier for the fat councillor. So the force is the change in momentum divided by the change in time. So it's dmdt by dt. So that's the force. So what it means is that if I weigh, say, 4 times as much as a small child, the force on me is 4 times higher. Yeah, it could be. It depends how heavy you are, council. So by me coming down the slide, it's actually a more serious test because I'm hitting the ground with 4 times the force that a small child would hit. So, councillors, I didn't come to any harm. I came out that 4 times.
Yeah, 1 minute left.
I'll give you a bit longer, Mr. Mayor. It's quite good stuff. This is. I came out that slide like a rat out of a
That's a lie.
That's the division 3. Division 3. Division 3.
You've got 45 seconds left.
No, I'm going to ask for an extension, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, the slide is challenging. It's great fun. It's clearly not meant to be used by very young children, and there's a much smaller slide in the park for the under 5s. A sign on the slide in question states, this slide is fast and suitable for the thrill and adventure seekers. That's what it says. On hot sunny days, the metal slide can get hot. Please take care when using the slide. Now, clearly the sign hasn't worked to deter parents and carers from allowing their children to go on the slide, which has no doubt resulted in some scratches and tears and scorching in the hot sun. But councillors, it's there for a reason. There's different ways of looking at risk, but there's a way of looking at risk from the world of mountaineering. There's 2 kinds of risk. Think of it not as risk, but as danger. There's subjective danger and there's objective danger. All right. So subjective danger is what do you feel about it? How scary is it in effect? So you climb, you're doing a climb somewhere, you feel, oh, I'm terribly scared. But what's the actual objective danger? What is the chance of actually being hurt? And I think that's what we're looking at here. There's no evidence that anybody has been hurt, and I didn't come to any harm.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. That's your time.
I've got one more paragraph, Mr. Mayor. I want to come on to the climbing wall, if I may. I think
Please,
about another minute.
Is there any objection, councillors? There is
Yeah,
objections.
let me do it.
There is objections. I'm going to put it to the vote, Councillor Johnson.
It's good stuff, though.
Those in favour of Councillor Johnson continuing, he's had 3 minutes and 38 seconds. Those objecting, you're objecting for your continuing, Councillor Johnson.
Oh, no, sorry. I thought we're voting for me to continue.
No.
We are. We're voting for you to continue, aren't we?
Okay. So those who wish Councillor Johnson to continue, please raise your hand. Of Councillor Brodovnik, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Singh, Councillor Parry, Councillor Knight, Councillor Henderson, Councillor Richardson, that's 7. Sorry, Councillor Johnson.
No, you didn't count me. We just had to know about that.
Well, sorry, I didn't see your hand up.
Well, my hand was it.
Okay, for those for allowing Councillor Johnson to continue, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. How long do you need, Councillor Johnson?
Just one more paragraph, Mr. Mayor. No more than a minute.
How long's the paragraph?
It's that long.
Right.
So it's not as long as the slide.
Thank you.
All right. The climbing wall is another matter. So, councillors, I'd say I've got very moderate experience as a climber, as a rock climber. I would say I wasn't a very good one either. But I can, and for that reason, I can confidently say that more handholds are definitely needed on the climbing wall. Now, councillors, they can easily be added in quite economically. You can buy them in the climbing shops in Perth. It's just a matter of drilling a hole in, and I'd be happy to show Mr. Coat and staff where they could go. I did have several attempts at climbing the climbing wall, and I couldn't get up it. Okay, I was wearing my sandals. I'll go back at the weekend wearing a pair of climbing boots. Other climbing walls I'm familiar with have many holes colour-coded, so climbers, in this case the children, can graduate in difficulty, starting off with, say, green handholds, and then which would allow them to get to the top quite easily, and then graduating to another colour, which is harder. So that's the principle of climbing walls. The current handholds, I believe, are inadequate because I simply could not get up. I could not get through that hole that has been the subject of complaints, and I think that hole should be left there so that people can get through. And it wasn't because I was too big to go through it. I just couldn't get up there. So, councillors, I believe there are more handholds are needed to make the climbing wall interesting to the children. And of course, if they find it too easy, then they can just omit certain holds, which is the practice on most climbing walls. So I think adding extra holds in could be done by a councillor request. I'm sure if I suggested to Mr. Coaten that the extra hole was needed here and there, be happy to put it in as part of the maintenance budget. So councillors, yeah, that's why I'm against the motion.
I think that paragraph was longer than the slide, Councillor Johnson. Speaker for the motion. Speaker against the motion. No other speakers for or against? Then you're right to reply, Councillor Brodovnik.
All right, I just want to say, look, there have been accidents reported repeatedly on Facebook, and the City of Swan has confirmed Facebook is not an official source that the city logs for complaints. But that's how people talk to each other, and they don't agree with Councillor Johnson's assessment of the slide. A lot of people haven't seen the sign according to the comments that I've read as well. So we can listen to what people are overwhelmingly telling us, and I suggest we do. Please support this motion.
Thank you. I'm now putting the motion as amended, which is a substantive motion. Those in favour of Councillor Jones, Councillor Brodovnik, Councillor Singh, Councillor Congdon, myself, Councillor Parry, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson and Councillor McCulloch, which is 9. The motion is passed. Those against were Councillors Bowman, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Knight and Councillor Richardson, which is 6. The motion's passed 9-6. That takes us to the next item, C 1.4.
Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, let's come back in 10 minutes' time. They say when you get... Is yours at C 1.4, Cassius Turvey Memorials on page 610 of the agenda. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I do note, just in consultation with Mr. Bishop yesterday, the amended motion after another meeting with Michelle Turvey yesterday. I do have the updated motion that was sent through yesterday. So, okay, so item C 1.4. That council resolve that the City of Swan's Reconciliation Action Plan Committee work with Michelle Turvey, the mother of Cassius Turvey, to create a remembrance and reflection space in Wheat Park at New Junction to remember his life. 2, on completion of the initiative listed in Part 1, an event to be held to unveil the space to allow community to come together to appreciate the remembrance and reflection space. The reason being, it is important to commemorate the loss of an innocent young man in the spirit of reconciliation and community. A remembrance and reflection space will stand as a reminder of Cassius Turvey, an emerging, inspiring and gentle leader who, even in his short life, has left a significant legacy in our communities across our nation and the world.
Thank you. Can I ask you to pass that up, what you just read, to the minute clerk so we can get it on? The old motion came up. I think minute clerk's trying to find it now, but
I can email it again.
you put your hand up to second that motion, Councillor Jones. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor, just have to wait to get the amended motion on the board, and then I'll ask if there's anyone against. Councillor Catalano hasn't rejoined us.
No, she's difficult here somewhere.
Thanks for your patience, councillors. It's just about ready. I'll start reading those. So item 1 is that the City of Swan Reconciliation Plan Committee, and it's called Advisory Group. City of Swan Reconciliation Action Advisory Group. Work with Michelle Turvey, the mother of Cassius Turvey, to create a remembrance and reflection space at the park in the junction to remember his life. 2, on completion of the initiative in part 1, event the out one viable space for our community to come together to appreciate the remembrance and reflection space. The reason is important to commemorate the loss of an innocent young man in the spirit of reconciliation and community. A remembrance and reflection space will stand in mind of Cassius Turvey, an emerging, inspiring and gentle leader who, even in his short life, has left a significant legacy in our communities, across our nation and the world. I'll ask, is there anyone against? Against, wish to debate it, councillor?
Yes, Mr Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. Then I'll ask Councillor McCullough to open your paper, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, this is something that has come from the tragedy that befell a young man a number of weeks ago, and a tragedy that has brought our communities together and seen the mother of Cassius, Michelle, speak up and embrace community as a whole, all cultures, to bring them together to acknowledge his life, to grieve together, and to ultimately celebrate the legacy that he's left as a young leader, a young teenager in our communities that was very involved in various sporting pursuits and a lot of activities within youth groups and organisations in the community. So following the gathering at Wheat Park a number of weeks ago, there were some discussions and some subsequent discussions from some of those comments from Michelle and others around a potential memorial, and with further discussions with Michelle and Michelle liaising with city staff, she was very appreciative and welcomed a memorial, which she further elaborated might be more in the sense of a reflective remembrance space that young people could sit and reflect with some significant words that were linked to Cassius, his manner of speaking and encouragement towards other young people in his community, and the way he was developing as a leader. So that was quite significant, and Michelle was quite overwhelmed that within the City of Swan that we might accommodate that and look at how we might go about that, hence some discussions with city staff who've been working hard to provide feedback and support. So, yeah, I would encourage you to support this motion as we stand together for community as one, and to embrace a young boy that has suffered a dreadful tragedy, and move forward and ensure that his legacy is something that is remembered and impacts young people for the better.
Thank you, Councillor McCulloch. Councillor Jones is the seconder.
I don't have anything to add, thanks.
Thank you. Speaker against, Councillor Parry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a father of 3 very young children, I have feel the deep sorrowness for the parents of Cassius. I could never imagine the pain you are suffering. I really can't. I have a very strong opinion what should happen to the alleged person who is alleged to commit this crime, but I will not comment as it is pending in the courts. The objection that I have with this motion is that there is no cap of expenditure, and if any councillor wishes to move an amendment to limit the expenditure to a suitable amount, I will not vote against this motion. Now, I wish to talk about the bigger issue at hand. As a person who has Aboriginal blood in my immediate and extended family, and of those families who have worked with Indigenous cultures in regional Australia and Northern Territory, and after many discussions, I believe that we do not do enough with our Indigenous people, for our Indigenous people and their culture, and I often believe that often symbolism trumps urgent structural reform within all levels of government. This needs to stop. We need to do more, a lot more. There is often an underlying sense of racism within this country, in particular stereotyping of our Indigenous brethren, and this needs to stop. I remember going to my daughter's netball game, who is 10 years old, on a cold wintry night. I heard under someone's breath racist comments about my daughter's teammate that made me frown and say something. This needs to stop. Politicians often promote inclusivity and acknowledgement to country to Indigenous people, but often do not provide the basic infrastructure necessary to improve their lives. Symbolism alone must stop and real reform must occur. It is my opinion that I see schools sometimes offer scholarships to Indigenous people who only because they can kick a football well, and not look at different people as a whole package. This attitude needs to stop. I've heard comments from people in St. George's Terrace who have hired someone because they've ticked a box because they're Aboriginal and they have to meet a quota. This attitude needs to stop too. As a snow-white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed heterosexual male, I understand that...
1 minute left, thank you. You have 1 minute left. What's your point of order, Councillor?
And I appreciate the speech, but we're talking about a memorial here, and this seems to be going off in a political
Rule, you have no point of order, but if we can, you've got 55 seconds left. Thank you, Councillor Parry.
Thank you.
You can address the motion.
I will. If you ever... Sorry, I need to finish this paragraph and I will address it. I understand that distractions state that in the context of my life has been relatively simple. However, this does not mean I'm not fully aware of what is happening in my backyard. If you ever came to a dinner with my members of extended family who work with the Indigenous people, some of the stories are very interesting. How we improve the way of life to the Indigenous people needs to be reviewed and completely adjusted. I strongly believe that my Indigenous brethren do not want a handout. They want a hand up to be allowed to be given the same opportunities as everyone else, because as a society we have failed so far. This means suitable housing, treatment in rural areas, and an education system that allows them to succeed and prosper.
Point of order?
We're not talking about housing here. We're not talking about Councillor Parry. We're talking about Cassius Turvey and the memorial.
Thank you, Councillor Richardson. If I could ask you to speak to the motion that's been put, which has got nothing...
I've got 2 more questions, Mr. Mayor.
Well, I don't know.
2 more paragraphs. Sorry, 2 more paragraphs.
You've got 13 seconds left.
Okay.
What I'd ask you to do is, you're mentioning a lot of other stuff that does not relate to the motion. This is about a memorial for a young boy. So please stay on point.
Thank you. As a councillor, Cassius needs to be remembered, but as a community and a nation, we have so much more to do. Structural reform is required for the Indigenous cause. Then we can move forward as one Australians.
Thank you. Speak for the motion. Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Henderson, you're speaking against?
A question if I may. If I could go back to the motion, is there any cap on what we might be spending to achieve this?
Well, nothing's been mentioned in the motion. It's been requested it be referred to the City of Swan's Reconciliation Action Advisory Group. But I did see some comments from Mrs. Turvey saying she'd like to use a young Indigenous artist, I believe by the name of Jay Dolman, to do a painting down at Weir Park, and also a young, and the name escapes me, a young poet to perhaps write some poetry on a wall down there that would adequately reflect her feelings. So there's been no budget allocated.
Mayor, then could I add an item 3 that maximum budget amount of $30,000 be available to fulfil those requirements?
Well, just before we start moving motions and getting seconders, I'll ask Mr. Coaten whether there's been any indication of an amount of money, and would that also then include on part 2 that an event be held? I mean, I think we've got to take it in steps. Mr. Coaten, can you give any guidance on any projected costs?
This item is being managed by Mr. Bishop, so I'll defer to him. If that's
Sorry,
right,
Mr. Bishop. Glad you stayed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I have had conversations with Michelle Turvey, the mother of Cassius. She has confirmed a preference towards something around the basketball area, which is an area which Cassius used to frequent. She didn't indicate any value. She was happy to be guided by the city and the city's reconciliation. Her preference was a memorial or something, some artwork possibly around that space. But yeah, there was no fixed figure or set figure. She was happy to be guided. And as she indicated, it would be subject to sort of further discussions anyway.
Thank you.
Move an amendment as well.
Well, I'm only going to deal with one amendment at a time. So I want to ask the mover and the seconder if point 3, moved by Councillor Parry, is that a maximum amount of $30,000 be allocated to the memorial. Is that accepted?
Point of order, Mr. Mayor, you can't. There's been debate on the item.
It was. Yes, but you can't move an amendment. You're saying, Councillor Bowman. No, you're asking if the movement thank you. So can I accept the amendment, Mr. CEO? I'm just struggling a bit at the moment. Yes, okay, but I'm just saying because it's been debated so far, I'm just seeking some guidance.
May I clarify something, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah. Yeah. I was seeing if it was acceptable to the mover and the seconder. So move Councillor Henderson. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Parry. Is there anyone against the amendment? You have a question, Councillor Podovnik, or you're against the amendment?
Just against putting a limited amount on it. I think it needs to go to the committee and options need to be discussed. I just want it to be looser.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson, you're speaking. You've got questions.
Question. Can Councillor Parry second an amendment if he's already spoken?
He didn't second. Well, sorry, he did put his hand up to second it. I'll have to refer to Ms Hodgkins to look at the local meeting procedures law because too tired to comment at the moment. Can I just deal with this amendment first? Thanks, Councillor Richardson.
You're dealing with variation to motion amendment under 6.4. Any member proposed a variation motion during the debate presiding in which last amendment objects. No objection to proposed variation. Objection is received by a member who has spoken. Proposed amendment dealt with as an amendment.
So Councillor Parry can second.
Yep, he hasn't really spoken on it.
Well, he has spoken. No, but you've spoken on the item.
So you can't move.
So I can't accept Councillor Parry as the seconder. I'll ask once again for Councillor Henderson's amendment of limiting the amount to $30,000. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Zanino. You said you weren't accepting that, Councillor Prodovnik, is that correct? Okay, well then we'll have to debate it, but before I enter the debate, Councillor Richard, you had a question?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just had a quick question. Were all the Midland Guildford councillors involved in the meetings with the City Swan and Michelle Turvey?
Mr Bishop?
No, there's been no meetings that I've been involved in with any Midland or Guildford councillors. Once I became aware of the notice of motion, I consulted directly with Michelle Turvey.
And which councillors were those in those meetings?
Mr Bishop? Sorry, I should have been a bit more clearer. There were no councillors involved in the meetings or discussions I had with Michelle Turvey.
Did Michelle Turvey approach you first, or did the City of Swan approach her?
If I understand correctly, once I became aware of the notice of motion, I contacted Michelle Turvey to seek her opinions and thoughts on the proposal.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson, as the mover of the amendment. You've got 3 minutes for the debate. Thank you.
I'll try not to take 3 minutes, Mr Mayor. Councillors, we have a responsibility to spend our ratepayers' funds in an appropriate manner. We do that through our budgeting processes and through limiting amounts or setting amounts as a part of our matters that we deal with here. So I would have thought that $30,000 would be a reasonable amount to be able to effectively and adequately be able to deal with this matter. So I think unless someone has a better idea, I'm more than happy with that amount.
Thank you, Councillor Zanino, as the seconder. I'm going to hear from the seconder first. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, I concur with my fellow councillor, Councillor Henderson. I think that the figure of $30,000 is fairly substantial, and I think that it can go a long way in what is proposed here. As Councillor Henderson said, if someone else has got another figure, will speak up. But I think that 30,000 should be more than enough to cover the proposal that's proposed in the notice of motion.
Thank you. You had a question, Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just wondering if that $30,000 cap included the artist and also that community function.
Well, it says a maximum amount.
Yeah.
Be allocated the memorial. It does not mention the event. Well, yes, and as I've just explained, the motion, item 3, the amendment is a maximum amount of $30,000 be allocated to the memorial. It does not say anything about the memorial and the event.
What would the cost of the event be then, and how would we cap that?
Well, depends on how big the event wants to be and how many people are invited and what sort of...
and who would organise that, and how would we debate that? Or
Mr Bishop?
I would imagine, Mr Mayor, there would be a corporate event organised by the city.
and would there be a costing for that or a capping?
Mr Mayor, there would be a cost. I couldn't venture a price unless my colleague, Miss Pickering, has any idea from previous experience.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I would say a minimum of $5,000, but really it depends on the nature of the event and what entertainment you want, how many people are coming, logistics, that sort of thing. It could go anywhere up to $65,000. It's really up to council to give us direction on that.
May I just provide some clarity, Mr. Mayor?
Sorry, I've got Councillor Henderson had his hand up first. Are you asking a question, Councillor Henderson?
Yes, Mayor. I imagine that we would be able to provide that funding through our grants program.
Mr. Bishop?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, theoretically, somebody could apply for a grant and do it out externally to the city. Again, that is an option, but I would imagine the intent is here. I would be subject to advice from Councillor McCulloch, but my interpretation of the intention here is that the city would organise and run an event for the unveiling of a memorial that the city had installed.
You have a question, Councillor McCulloch?
Just to provide clarity in my...
Well, perhaps you can deal with that and you'll write a reply when we get to it. Thank you.
I actually would support 30,000 for the memorial. I thought it was for both things, so I'm withdrawing my opposition.
And the seconder to the motion? Councillor Jones, have you got any issue with the amendment capping it at $30,000? Then that becomes part of the substantive motion.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. That's not the correct process that's been followed.
I'm just trying to get through the night in a timely manner. Councillor Bowman, if you want to raise a point of order and saying I'm incorrect, well, then we'll continue the debate and we'll keep going.
Mr. Mayor, it's not about being timely manner, it's about following the proper process.
Yeah, well, I accept your point of order, Councillor Bowman. I'll call for a speaker for the motion as now it stands. Councillor Johnson, well, you got a question, Councillor Johnson?
Yeah, I've got a question. It goes to what is this $30,000 for? So I think everyone's in agreement that it's for both events, but if we actually look at what it says...
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, it's not for the event, it's just for the memorial, Councillor Johnson.
Okay.
And
I think the
point of order, Mr. Mayor.
What's your point of order, please?
A comment that most people are in favour. I'm not in favour.
I'll withdraw that. I'm just trying to help.
Sorry, I didn't even hear that comment.
All right, so my question is really relating to the accuracy of the motion and not the content of it. So if I could please see item 1, if the minute clerk could let me see that. So we're saying a maximum amount be allocated to the memorial. So that is presumably referring to item 1, but item 1 as amended there does not include the word memorial. So it's not clear. It's not completely clear what the 30,000 is for. That's my comment. I think you need to say a maximum amount of $30,000 be allocated to the remembrance and reflection space. It's just clarity in drafting.
I understand the point you're trying to make, Councillor Johnson. Item 1 talks about a remembrance and reflection space, and the amendment from Councillor Henderson and Zanino talks about a memorial. So if you wish to change it, well, I think we need to get it right.
Yes, thank you. I'm satisfied with that.
Thank you. You've got an amendment, Councillor Congredon. We have to finish this amendment first.
Yes.
Thank you. I'll ask Speaker against the motion as it currently stands. Thank you, Councillor Congredon. You've got 3 minutes.
I won't take that long, Mr. Mayor. I think I've got the cart before the horse here. If this part is lost, I'd like to see that part 3 is removed and the wrap prepare a range of options and cost for consideration to council for adoption. That's the appropriate way to do this. Not start throwing money that we don't even know what it's going to cost us. We cap it at 30,000. There's a piece of art going to go up on this wall very shortly that cost what, Mr. Cope?
I don't have the exact figures to hand from
throw me
memory.
into-
It was $35,000.
$35,000 for a piece of art going above this doorway. And we're talking here of $30,000 for a memorial and an event and whatever else it may be. It
Question.
should be. Sorry.
Sorry, I'm just
What-
thinking
what-
about your speech.
Can I
Sorry,
finish?
Councillor Richards, unless you've got a point of order, do not interrupt the speaker.
Thank you. The appropriate way to do this is not to put a figure there. The appropriate way to do this, because we have a RAP, and I'm very supportive of what we want to do here, but what the RAP needs to do is to sit down and work out what we're going to do with all this. Do we have a statue? Do we have a plaque? Do we have an event? What do we do to celebrate the life of this young man and remember this young man for future generations? So the RAP need to do this and bring it back to this chamber. This doesn't have to be done by December the 25th. Got to remember that. So we can come into the new year and the RAP can get together and, repeating myself, come back to this chamber and go, guys, here's a whole bunch of options for us to consider. Which do you think is the best one that would suit and remember this guy, Cassius? So I can't support 3, and I will be asking you in a moment about an alternate to remove 3 and put in exactly what I said.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion. Any other speakers for or against the motion? Councillor Howlett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support the intent of the motion. However, I do not support this as being a councillor's motion. I recall hearing Michelle Turvey asking that her son's death not be used in any political way. And as it stands right now, we're debating in a political forum a memorial to her son. I did write to the CEO asking that the motion be withdrawn because I felt that the particulars of the debate were better held in private and not in the public forum where we could discuss such matters as money and with those councillors who wanted to be involved in the process with the reconciliation committee. So I 100% support the intent of the motion. However, I cannot support the motion because I believe it should never have been brought out in this political way. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion. Know that you've spoken, Councillor Congdon. You can't move an amendment. I wanted to move the amendment before. Any other speakers? Councillor Bowman.
Mr. Mayor, just to clarify, you keep saying the motion, but we are debating only the amendment, I believe, because the last few speakers have, in my opinion, spoken about the motion, not the amendment. So I just wanted to clarify that.
To be honest, Councillor Bowman, we're just dealing with the amendment. So we're dealing with the amendment only, and I'll ask for any other speakers for or against the amendment. Councillor Johnson.
Look, I'll keep this brief because I think it's important to be respectful, particularly respectful because of we're talking about a memorial to a young man, Cassius Turvey. I think that on this occasion, Councillor Congdon is right. I think that this needs to go to the Reconciliation Action Committee to decide what to do and then bring it back to Council. So I think at this point we do not need to set an amount. It should just be referred to the Reconciliation Advisory Group. So I'm opposed to the amendment with its dollar amount on it.
Thank you. Speaker for the amendment. Any other speakers for or against? Then Councillor Henderson, you're right to reply. Okay, I'm going to put it straight to the vote. Those in favour of the amendment? I have Councillors Henderson, Zanino and Parry. The amendment is lost. And all those against were Councillor Jones, Bowman, Radovnik, Johnson, Howlett, Singh, Congdon, Lucas, Knight, Richardson and McCulloch. Thank you. Yeah, well, Councillor Catalano has not returned from our 8:24 break, so she's absent. So whatever the numbers is, 11-3.
Can I move an amendment?
Now you can move an amendment. Thank you, Councillor Congdon.
That's now 3's been removed. Yep. On the screen.
Well, I can stay there and just put there that it was defeated.
All right, so the amendment would be, and where it's put in the applicable space, is that the Reconciliation Plan Committee prepare a range of options and costs for consideration to Council for adoption.
I'm going to get my stuff in there if you don't mind.
It's fine, Councillor Catalano. Range of options and costs.
Yeah, range of options and costs for consideration to Council for adoption.
Thank you. I'll ask if that amendment is suitable to the mover and the seconder. You're shaking your head, Councillor Bowman. What am I doing wrong now?
We've already debated it. You don't ask the mover and seconder. Councillor Congdon has moved an amendment. You ask for a second to that amendment, and that then gets debated.
Well, I thought if it was acceptable to the mover and the seconder, we could bypass the debate, but I'll ask for a seconder. Councillor Henderson. Is there anyone against the amendment? Well, I'll let you ask a question, Councillor Bowman.
Mr Mayor, through you to the CEO and maybe Councillor Congdon, fully support what he's trying to do. Just how that works with the 1 and 2. I'm not quite sure if there's a little bit more that needs to be put in there.
That's why I said, Councillor, through you, Mr Mayor, I said, Councillor Bowman, that it would need to be fit into the structure of the recommendation. Maybe it should go as 1, and then the rest go 2 and 3.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, obviously the intent is to work through the Reconciliation Action Group. So part 3 is consistent with that they would have to work with Michelle Turvey for the consideration of options to come back to council. I see that being a collaborative exercise between the RAP and Ms Turvey.
And that's what it says in the first line of part 1 of the motion. So we can scroll down, so I'll see if Councillor Congdon, yes, Councillor Henderson. I'll ask if there's anyone against that amendment. Being no one against, I'll declare that part of the substantive motion. And I'll ask if there's any speakers for or against that have not spoken to the substantive motion. No other speakers?
Question, Mr Mayor.
Question, Councillor Bowman.
Through you to the CEO, and I fully support the intent of Councillor Congdon's motion, but does he believe that that's that flows, because we've got 1 and 2, but then 3 back tracks. So I think there may need to be some wordsmithing / changes to get the intent.
I'll take any advice you've got, Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, 1 is the important thing. 3 needs to become part 2. But if you say you really want the consideration to come back to as part of 2 to be part of 1, don't you? Yeah.
3 to 1. That's what I reckon. 3 to 1.
Consideration. You really don't want completion part 1, do you? Mr. Mayor, you probably could remove just for part 2, take out the words on completion initiative part 1, and just have an event to be held in the space to allow the community to come together. So if you then made that as part 3 effectively, so what you're doing is having a reconciliation action group consider it. They're going to bring a range of options back to you with cost, and then when you've got an agreement, then you hold an event, and that event we would have costed up and presented it back as part of the report to council. That's right.
I see your hand, Councillor Johnson. Can we just finalise this?
So 2 becomes 3. You could have, you could want to have, say, follow consideration or following adoption of a recommendation by council and an event be held to unveil the space. That way, if council didn't adopt something, then you're not going to have an event. So probably change the words just in front of event, following adoption of an outcome by council, following an adoption of an outcome by council, an event be held. So
I'll ask if that's acceptable to the mover and the seconder.
Question first.
Question, Councillor Johnson.
Bearing in mind that we're talking about quiet allocation, I'm just wondering whether there's a slightly better way of wording it. So if I can suggest something, it will go like this.
Well, you could move an amendment, Councillor Johnson.
Well, I could, but I think it might be easier if I just read out what I think is the right thing and then people give me some feedback. Okay, so how I would write this is that the City of Swan's Reconciliation Advisory Group.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
I've asked Councillor Johnson if he can move an amendment, if he wants to move an amendment. I've asked the CEO for input to try and get the motion better worded, and to be very frank, I'm very disappointed that this item has taken up so much with so much, well, I won't say anything more. I'm asking the mover, which I believe was Councillor Councillor McCulloch, and the seconder, Councillor Jones, is the current motion on the board acceptable to both of you? Is that a yes, Councillor McCulloch? Councillor Jones? Thank you. Do you want to move any type of amendment, Councillor Johnson?
I believe, Mr. Mayor, there is a simpler way of doing this.
Well, I'm asking if you want to move an amendment. I'll ask if anyone who has not spoken to this item, if they wish to debate it, either for or against. In Councillor McCulloch, you have a right of reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, I had confirmed this motion with City staff early yesterday after a discussion with Michelle. So if it had ended up in the agenda, it may have allowed for further clarification. So we could have been a little more clear in the lead up to this motion this evening. My intent with 1 and 2 was to look at our reconciliation advisory group, to look at these options and work with Michelle for an outcome. And that would obviously come to council for a response. Michelle's request in regards to a memorial was quite simple. So even as far as costs, that's why there had been no set amount, but for the Reconciliation Advisory Group to determine what may or may not happen. And part of her request was that it was a memorial that just simply allowed community to come together. Michelle's wishes, even just around that, was just to encourage a small group to come together and to build capacity in our youth from all walks of life and from all cultures. And that was the intent around this, and her full support and thankfulness to the city was very evident. So as to any political gain, that is not the case. So I think what we've got now in front of us is a workable motion and something that we can move forward on and sensitively work through to provide a response to council and to get on with a reflective space that honours Cassius. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm now going to put the motion. Those in favour of Councillor Jones, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Podovnik, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Singh, Councillor Congdon, myself, Councillor Parry, Councillor Knight, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson, and Councillor McCulloch. I make that, I think, 12, 13. The only person against Councillor Richardson. Councillor Howlett and Councillor Catalano are not in the chamber. The motion is passed. Thank you, councillors. We now move to the next item, which is item C 1.5. Councillor Podovnik, streetscaping in Midlands, on page 611 of your agenda. Thank you, Councillor Podovnik.
All right, so the motion is that council resolve to request the CEO to investigate options for improving streetscapes with plantings in and around Midland for consideration as part of the budget process. The scope of work is to include Morrison Road, Lloyd Street, Victoria Street, and the verge on the corner of Lloyd Street and Great Eastern Highway, with planting to start during next year's planting season. And the reason for the motion is to improve the appearance of Midland streetscapes.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Knight. Is there anyone against? Question, Councillor Bowman.
Mr Mayor, should these sort of matters be discussed in our ward meetings instead of a notice of motion?
They could be in addition, or they could be discussed during our budget workshops. But I've got the motion in front of me. I'll ask, is there anyone against? Being no one against, I declare that carried, which now takes councillors to, hopefully, is the final item for the night. I'll be handing over to the Deputy Chair. I've declared a direct financial interest in this item. It relates to vacant land rates on page 612. Because I own a vacant block of land, I'm leaving the chamber.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Mr Deputy Mayor, I move that Council resolves to request the CEO prepare a report on the benefits of and what is required to introduce a separate rating category for vacant land. And the reason for my motion, the development of vacant residential, commercial, industrial land is in the best interest of the community as it supports the economy and will improve the street appeal by introducing a separate rating category for vacant land. The city can set a higher rate than $1 for vacant land to encourage development. There are many examples where vacant land has been allowed to set derelict, attracting complaints from neighbouring properties due to the parcel lands not being maintained, and all vacant land should be rated using the same
prescribed capital value rate.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Johnson. Is there anyone opposed? Question, Councillor Zanino.
Question, Mr Deputy Mayor, to the CEO or whoever. When you say vacant land, does that include rural land? Or is this just vacant land which is zoned for urban or residential? Is the rural aspect included?
Well, it's got to be directed. You know, it's
Whoever can
okay.
answer it.
So I don't know whether this is a question for Kim. It's not here. Mr. CEO, can you address it?
Mr. Mayor, look, there is a broad definition of vacant land, unapproved vacant land. That which is the Act allows an uplift value of up to 200% of its normal rate. You could have vacant land that deals with residential and commercial. I don't think rural land isn't included in the definition of vacant land if it's already coded as rural land. So it's quite specific under the Act what vacant land is.
So rural land is not.
Rural land's not included.
Thank you.
Sorry, I've got Councillor Howell. Question?
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I think it's probably a question for Councillor Bowman, but it's also for staff. So I think that part of the intent of the motion about the vacant land is to, and this might be the wrong word, but to not land bank land so that actually is not sitting there for a long time being undeveloped. And if that's the case, then how does the city itself owns land that it sits on and doesn't develop? Does that not set a dual precedent?
Where's the question going to? You're getting
my question's going
yeah.
to the CEO. Thank you. Thank you.
Through the chair, the city's land is actually non-rateable, so it doesn't apply to us.
I understand. I think it's the intent of the motion, I think, is to stop people holding on to land and not developing it. In such an instance, if the city is doing the same, it perhaps is creating a precedence that isn't fair in the eyes of the community. That was my question. Would that be?
So through the chair, it's quite usual for local governments to differentially rate vacant land using an uplift value of up to 200%. It, as you say, it doesn't apply to any agency that it exempts. So, for instance, government agencies like Development WA don't pay rates to us; they pay rates to the state government. But effectively, it is a tool used by local governments to encourage people. I say that to encourage people who are land banking to seek development of it rather than simply hold it.
Councillor Henderson.
Could I propose an amendment, please, Deputy Mayor, and that is after the words rating category 4, urban zoned vacant land.
Could you repeat it again, please?
To insert the words urban zoned before the words vacant land.
Is that satisfactory to you, Councillor Bowman? Councillor Johnson?
No, but I think what Councillor Hammond's trying to do exclude rural. And if that's the case, I'm happy to put excluding rural. But if it's just urban, you're now missing out on a whole lot of other zoning, like commercial and industrial and everything like that. So
Sorry, just one moment, please. So your amendment.
I'll withdraw that.
Withdraw the amendment.
And I'll propose another, if I may.
Can I hear the amendment?
So it's rating category for vacant land other than rural zone.
Is that acceptable? Is that acceptable to you, Councillor Johnson? You are the second of the motion?
Yes.
Okay, then that becomes part of the motion. All right, so is there anyone against? Okay, well, there's none against. I'll declare it carried. Call the Mayor back. No, we could drag it out with notice of motions to the next meeting. The motion was carried unanimously, David.
So I believe that concludes all the items on the agenda. Councillors, before I formally close the meeting, I'd like to take the opportunity on behalf of my family and I wish everyone else a very happy, Merry Christmas and festive New Year. And we'll see you all back here in February, if not before. Oh, I said if not before. Can we try and get through Merry Christmas without arguing? Thank you to this.
Happy holidays to everyone. Enjoy.
Thank you. Meeting's closed at 9:33.